We have quite a bit to do this evening. We have a rather robust agenda. We have some business we need to take care of first. I would like to introduce proudly our newest member, Nick Belia, to my right. Welcome to the board.
Thank you.
We also need to reorganize the board, and I would like to call for nominations.
Nominate William O'Connell for chairman.
Second.
We have a second. We have a first and a second for myself as chair. Any other nominations? Seeing none, I call for the vote for myself. I'm sorry, it's awkward. As chair, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes unanimously. I would like to nominate Brian Salisbury as vice chair.
I'll second that.
So we have a first and a second for vice chair for Brian Salisbury. Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I believe technically, do we have a secretary?
A clerk?
Yes.
I nominate Dennis out of respect.
Yeah. No. No.
I will nominate Phil. That was denied, correct?
Correct.
I will nominate Phil as clerk.
Second, somebody.
Second.
We have a motion on the floor for Phil Devine to be clerk. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, that motion passes unanimously. Congratulations. As I said, we have a rather robust agenda tonight. I like to take things a little bit out of order. We have some continuations tonight, correct? Can you talk about Prospect Hill Estates?
We do have Prospect Hill Estates that's seeking a continuation and the applicant is present.
Sir, the floor is yours, Lou.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Lou Petrozzi from Wall Street Development Corp. The reason we're asking for a continuance is we just recently got the peer review proposal first week in May. We haven't really accepted it yet, but we're reviewing it. And so we've continued our process with both the Conservation Commission and the Planning Board to give us time to sort through that proposal and work through some other logistics for the site that still need to be added to the plan.
Okay. Amy, what is the time frame on this?
The time frame is we
Yep.
will need an extension on this application. It's up to the board. We are thinking of possibly talking with the applicant, continuing to June 9th and then extending the deadline to July 29th for the decision.
Is it possible we could push it out until August?
What we still need to collect from the applicant is a signature on the scope of services and the check. So, and then at that point, Conservation Commission will be starting their review. And so it's really up to the applicant and the board what they would like to do. There is some work that has to be done prior.
I think we have a lot of work still ahead of us in this, Lou. I'm wondering if we switch to one meeting a month in July and August. I'm wondering if you'd like to either be on the only meeting in August or the first meeting in September. And we can extend the application deadline to give you enough time to sort out what you're going through.
Yeah, so Ann and I talked a little bit about that. That's kind of, she informed me that the board likes to have only one meeting per month, which is totally fine with me. I just, I'm not sure what information is going to be coming out of the peer review or how complicated it's going to be. So my preference would be just to do it on a month-to-month basis. Continue to June 9th. Let us get the information together and then decide what's left for the board to, if we need to extend the decision deadline we certainly can do that at any point.
It's my understanding that the Conservation Commission is still looking at getting plans at a 40-inch scale, that those haven't been received yet. So,
Okay,
Well, we delivered those on Saturday, so they have everything that they need. They did a site walk on Saturday, and I'm not quite sure what came of that because I was not present. But we did deliver to them 40 scale drawings as they requested it on Saturday. And unfortunately, my environmental guy went on vacation for a few days, so I don't really know the outcome of what additional information they're looking. I think it really boils down to this peer review. They're going to rely heavily on the peer review. I'm sure that your board will do the same. I was just a little bit disturbed by the, let's call it the numbers involved with the phases of the review. It just doesn't seem to, jive with what we would expect.
Mr. Chairman, in light of the fact that peer review agreement hasn't been reached or retained, and then once that happens, they're going to go out and review and come back. They're not going to be ready by the best case scenario, July.
Best case.
Right.
I think more
I think
realistic
it's-
could be August.
Yeah, and I do think it's, to the extent that any of members of the public keep coming back out
It's
for this, I think it's unreasonable to continue it to June. So Lou, if you could, I do think August or September is realistic, given what you're facing. We just don't want the public to keep coming back out.
Understood. Understood. Well, I can amend my, to continue the hearing until the first meeting is your meeting in July and extend the decision deadline until August or September. I do think then, between now and 60 days from now, we're certainly, I don't know, when is your meeting in July?
it was the
it's the
first,
14th.
it's the 14th.
So we're 60 days away from that, so there's really not a lot of work here, quite honestly. I mean, I certainly would expect a peer review to have a completed report to the planning board before the July meeting.
Jim, where do we stand with the peer review process right now?
Right, so Mr. Petrosi has that scope and he's evaluating it. The only question I have, Mr. Chairman, and maybe this is towards Amy, what is the deadline at this time for the decision?
Right
May.
now, I believe it's the end of May.
Okay. So the end of May, and Lou, have you received the request for an extension of that deadline?
I sent an email earlier in the week after Amy and I had discussed. We were going to leave it up to the board to, once they granted it, to write in. Well, basically, we just extended all the deadlines 60 days. Thought that was a good starting point. I have no problems extending the decision deadline an extra 30 or some odd days. But I do think that we should be in a position to have a peer review report and a hearing in July.
Okay,
I mean, the peer review, when did we last have a meeting? 2 months ago, and we were waiting for a peer review proposal back then, and we just got it last week. So this is not, I don't know who's doing this peer review, but to me, to wait 60 days or almost 3 months for a proposal is ridiculous.
So that only confirms my suspicion that you probably won't be ready for July if it's taken this long to get to this point. And the specter of, if we come to July and we don't have information, then we have to base our decision off of lack of information. I don't think that's your benefit or ours. So I strongly recommend and ask you to consider moving it to a reasonable date so we can move this process along quickly.
Well, I with all due respect, I mean, I think there needs to be some sort of a sense of urgency on the peer reviewer. If he's not capable of doing it because he's busy or do something, then we need to find somebody else that is capable of doing it within the timeframes that are allowed. This is not on this shouldn't be all on my shoulders.
I have to disagree because the scope of services has not been executed or signed at this point.
So that's held us up.
It's not, the document has not been signed, so that needs to be signed on the applicant's behalf, and that hasn't been done. So that has to be done first.
So I would think we move this to,
I don't know if the board is aware, but the person who signed this proposal isn't even working for the firm anymore.
They have another person that is
Well-
aware of the project and has also reviewed the scope of services.
Well, I've had,
Mr. Chairman.
I'm not
if
gonna
the-
debate it. I've offered you my dates. Those are the dates that I'd like. And it's up to the peer reviewer between whether or not I submit a check and a proposal. When I do, the peer reviewer is responsible for getting the job done.
Lou, Mr. Chairman, if the applicant's not willing to extend to the date you request, just continue to the next meeting and you can make a decision at that time on the information you have.
okay,
So moved.
do we need a motion?
So are you looking at May 26th,
The very next meeting.
very next meeting?
Well, I've requested a continuance until June. So what's my?
June 9th is
June
what
9th.
you had requested, June 9th.
But we now we'll make an action at the next meeting,
Okay.
correct?
Yeah.
Which will be June 9th.
Is that motion seconded, or is it's up to the board to
seconded.
decide?
No, I'm sorry, the second meeting in May is what date?
The 26th.
The 26th, excuse me. So it will be continued to the 26th. Based on input from the former town planner and our consultant. All in favor of continuing this to May 26th, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, that motion passes unanimously.
What about an extension?
I think we need to extend the date beyond May to optimistically.
Well, we can't extend it. That's up-
Mr. Chairman, Amy, the deadline is what at this time?
I don't have the exact date at this time. I'd have to look. I can look in.
We can address the extension at the next meeting.
Well, I don't think we can. I mean, if the deadline is before the next meeting, then we need to. Even we vote tonight. Is there any way that you could find out the
Yep.
deadline?
Yep.
So while that's being looked up, I'd like to move on to
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, just holding on this item real quick.
the motion on the floor to continue the,
Let me check.
to the next meeting, so we have to vote on that.
I think Jim wants to hold for a second.
Okay.
May 20th.
All right, so we have to vote tonight,
On the date.
unless he extends. Lou, what's your pleasure?
I've already offered you I've already requested an extension. Why do you, I don't understand where the board is heading with this thing. I've asked for a continuance because I recognize that the board doesn't have the information. So now you try to pigeonhole the hearing to the next hearing, but you want an extension on the date. It's kind of like a package deal. I asked for an extension or to continue the hearing until June 9th and an extension of the decision date to the end of July. I don't understand the problem here.
Because Lou, the problem is that we didn't want to keep the public coming out for no reason.
Well, we don't know that yet. That's a hypothetical.
It's not a hypothetical, Lou. You're not even gonna have somebody engaged by then to do the peer review,
I don't-
right?
well,
I mean, that's realistic. When is that gonna get signed? When is-
Well, as soon as I have a response back as to what the scope of this work is, this is a 70-acre site. And they provided a scope for 70 acres, but really the subdivision is only on maybe, 25 of it. So I just think that it's an overreach.
Okay, so that, I mean, that's gonna be something that you need to work out with the peer review.
Yeah, I'm trying to do that. As I said, the person that wrote the proposal, who I had tried to contact, is no longer working there. And now I'm been, ponied off to the other guy who's reportedly reviewing gonna perform the peer review. I'm doing the best I can. I just got this last week.
So I think it's circumstances beyond everybody's control here. And we're trying to do the best we can to appease both parties.
I don't
Jim.
understand why the request to continue the hearing that I've offered or suggested or requested and the extension to the decision date. I don't understand why those two dates are not acceptable to the board.
Because our
And-
concern is that we may not have everything by June 9th. We don't want the public to come out again. So the other option is to make a decision based on what's in front of us at our next meeting.
That's not,
Is that correct, Jim?
Not at this time, no. The decision deadline is the 20th, so it's either a decision rendered tonight or an extension to a date certain. The decision deadline has to be extended by the applicant, otherwise you're making a decision tonight.
which I've already requested, that decision deadline.
Let's try to accept a decision deadline to,
He has requested July 29th.
okay,
That's what the applicant has requested. In a continuance to the.
Dennis, I thought this would be fairly quick.
You want to amend what we've got already?
I'm sorry,
What was your question?
what's your feeling?
I'm not sure. I'm kind of confused.
I don't know why this is complicated. There will be no information available in realistically, anytime before September, August, realistically. We do move to the 1 meeting per month cycle. So this is a waste. I don't know why this is such this is a complicating.
Well, I think we have some resistance from the app.
Okay.
Would an option be continuing it to August?
What I would like to do is throw the idea out of a decision deadline to August 29th and have them appear at our meeting in August. Although we would like to have it September, I think a compromise would be August. Do you have the date for,
For our August meeting?
yes. I do not want to leave my phone here.
Okay, we are looking at the 11th.
Okay,
That's fine with me.
would you like to make a motion?
We
Can
see
we,
if
can we
they'll-
check the applicant to see whether they're willing to do that?
What are the dates?
August 11th.
August 11th for the meeting and August 29th for the deadline.
Okay, well, whatever you guys want to do is fine. I mean, to think that we're not going to have information from a peer reviewer in 90 days, that is ridiculous. But I'll play along with it.
I'll amend my motion.
And my second.
Okay, so the motion now is the 29th and the meeting on the 11th.
Correct.
Any discuss, there's motion on the floor. Any discussion? Call for the motion. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
I'll second the motion.
Yeah, you.
Oh, okay. Still got a little bit over.
Aye.
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 Aye, say anything.
I don't know, technically, you're not allowed, he's not allowed to vote, correct?
On this one, correct.
So that passes on a 5-0, 4-0 vote, 5-0 vote. I'd like to move on. Thank you, Lou.
Thank you.
Do we already hear tonight from Prospect, from Maple Street?
Hi, good evening. This is Brandon Lee from Kelly Engineering Group.
Mr. Lee, nice to see you again.
You as
Been a
well.
while. You're looking for your continuance?
Yes, we've responded to the peer review comments and we are waiting for their responses.
When would you like to continuance to?
To the next hearing date. Is that May 26th?
Okay.
I'm hoping we get a response in the next week or so. Our
Well,
response
if it's the next week or so, we're getting in a tight time frame.
Mhm.
Because technically, we would need everything submitted by next Friday.
No, we've submitted our responses. We're
Okay.
awaiting the peer review
Who's
response.
doing that peer review?
That's BSC. The applicant's responses came in April 20th. And then another one was revised and came in April 27th. And so those are now with our peer review.
It's realistic to have everything in place by, or
By
do
the
we want to
peer
push it to June?
I think probably June.
Mr. Lee, I think we may be better off pushing it to June. You saw we have that company doing another peer review now. I would feel more comfortable if we push it to the first meeting in June.
Okay,
Thank you for being amenable.
And we also need an extension.
We need an extension on the date.
And that would be.
The
July.
date currently is,
That we need an extension to June.
Okay.
The end of June. I can get you
I
a
would
date.
entertain a motion for the first meeting in June and the extension to June 30th.
Mhm.
I'll so move. I just want to make sure the applicant's agreeable to the extension of the decision deadline.
yes, we are.
Okay, so that'll be the end of June and the second Thursday in June.
Yes,
We have motion, the floor has been seconded.
Second.
Motion, the floor has been seconded. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, that motion passes unanimously. The next item on this agenda is, I'd like to skip around one last time. I apologize for the people from Mechanic Street and Depot Street being here for a little longer. I apologize. Bellingham Shores. Jim, can you bring us up to date on this? I know they're looking for a minor modification in the project.
Excuse me, yes, the Bellingham Shores has changed hands, as the board knows and the town knows. From the original developer that was permitted to this new developer, Eastland Development. Since purchasing the land, they realized there's an opportunity to improve the design by remove or not hauling in as much fill as originally intended, which obviously is a benefit to the community. So in discussions with the town staff, we asked for them to provide a brief overview of what that would look like. And they provided an engineer's set of plans, which we then had peer reviewed. The peer review engineers agreed that the modified design would work in terms of the original drainage package, which was something that was heavily vetted the first go around, if you remember. And also works with the utilities that DPW has reviewed and is okay with. There was some slight changes that was necessary, and the developer has agreed to doing. So in looking at the original decision, the thought was that if the board is agreeable that this change would just be a minor modification, which could be approved by a motion of the board tonight at a regularly scheduled meeting.
Okay. Dennis, any comments?
No, I have no problem with it.
Jim, you don't have any concerns, or the peer review is okay with everything?
Yeah, so originally it sounded like it might be a big overhaul, but after taking a look at the plans and having our peer review study it, I don't have any concerns. It actually, I think, will be a net benefit to the community, reducing the number of truck trips that would have to come during construction.
Phil?
I don't have any concerns.
I'm good.
Okay,
Yep.
so you're the expert on this. You're fine?
Yes, I'm fine.
Okay, I think from an overall standpoint, I think it makes a better project. I think from a safety standpoint, having less vehicle trips is a positive thing. So I would entertain a motion for a minor enhancement.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion on the floor. It has been seconded for a minor enhancement. Any additional discussion? I will call for the vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Right.
Aye. That motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Now I'd like to move on to 152 Depot Street. This evening's discussion. Gentlemen, you want to come up, please? I believe this is a continued public hearing. We've spent over 6 months on this project. And right now we're looking at mitigation proposal.
That's correct.
And that's the topic for this evening.
That's my understanding.
Can you please give us an update of what is going on?
Yeah, I think Joe will jump in relative to the,
Attorney Antonellis?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chair. Good evening to the board. Hope you're all doing well. Appreciate the opportunity to address you via Zoom. The applicant has been mindful of the concerns of the board and the citizens who are in the immediate area of Depot Street regarding the projects. And as you recall, we started with 2 projects, one which we've referred to as the North Project, which is the project that's before you now. And the second was the South Project, which my client has abandoned and did so because he felt as though the value in his moving forward would be to get a permitted warehouse on the north parcel. So we've gone through the process with the board, as you know. I think we've worked very cooperatively with the board and your peer review consultants. And I'm aware of the board's past practices regarding mitigation as relates to the impacts of traffic on the town of Bellingham, specifically in this area, obviously Depot Street and Hartford Avenue. The proposal by the applicant was to install a traffic light at the intersection of Depot and Hartford Avenue, and to pay for the design and construction installation of that traffic signal, and had gotten prices in and around the neighborhood of $250,000 to do that. I think the board heard concerns from the residents and perhaps from your own consultants that the installation of the traffic light, while maybe warranted, might not have actually improved the traffic conditions on either Depot or Hartford Avenue. And notwithstanding that, my client continued to take the position that he would make the donation of the land for that, of the money for that intersection. And that's in addition to donating the triangular strip that we've talked about in the past, which is obviously still on the table. I know that the board had some concerns about the pricing on that. And as a result of that, I was able to have my client agree to increase the mitigation offer to $400,000, which we believe is commensurate with the scope of this project and is in accord with the other types of mitigation that have been paid on the other projects in the town of Bellingham within the last couple of years. In addition, my client, mindful of the fact that your board cannot control development on Depot Street for as of right projects, and that your board recognizes that and is cooperative with developers. You're stern and you're strict, but you're cooperative. That perhaps a donation of the parcel on the south side, which is 27 plus acres, would be a good thing for the town of Bellingham, and specifically a wonderful thing for the residents, because you'd create 28 odd acres or 27 odd acres of open space. My client asked that I condition that on the fact that there be no appeals. And when I did that, I was asked specifically by Mr. Salisbury, appropriate question, why, Joe? Why condition it? And the response was because of the economic uncertainty of what happens if there's an appeal, notwithstanding the fact that the seller of the property, because my client doesn't own it, might not want to wait around for my client to prosecute and be successful on an appeal. So what I've done and proposed, and I've submitted it to your staff for review, is a sort of a hybrid approach to it, being that we would agree, and I have confirmation from my client that this is fine. We would agree to pay $400,000 in mitigation and do that upon the issuance of a certificate of occupancy. But in the alternative, to the extent that the project is approved and there are no appeals to either the development plan approval or any of the necessary permits surrounding this project, including the building permit, that my client, knowing that there are no appeals, will be able to preserve his right under the P&S. And if there is no appeal, he will purchase the property and donate it to the town as part of his mitigation package. To the extent that he is able to effectuate the rights in the purchase and sales agreement, which frankly, gentlemen, is going to cost him money to extend and do, then he would ask that his $400,000 contribution be reduced to $300,000. So it's a quid pro quo in a sense. If the town gets 27.5 acres of land, my client gets back the costs of what he believes it'll take him to extend the purchase and sales agreement to do it. Now, you may be wondering, why would he do that? And the answer is because if there's definition for him in the timeline to build the building, it improves his economic condition, because he's then able to go out into the market and tell potential tenants that I have a specific date that I can occupy the building. And gentlemen and ladies, that is worth something to my client. And so he's willing to go out and make the effort to secure that parcel. So our presentation, $1,000 in mitigation. However, to the extent that we can purchase the 27-acre parcel and there is no appeal, then we would donate the 27-acre parcel coincidental with the certificate of occupancy and reduce our $400,000 payment to $300,000. We would also make the $7,500 contribution that the chairman requested, and I think the board appreciates the quickness in our response to that suggestion. We grabbed right on and said, we'll do that. And again, I've reviewed the decision as the preliminary decision that has been prepared by your staff, and the conditions set forth therein are acceptable to the client. And provided that the board is acceptable to our mitigation package, I'm hopeful we can move forward. I trust that gives you a background as to the logic and analysis in coming up with that particular approach. From a standpoint of having represented multiple developers in the town of Bellingham, I believe this is the most generous approach to mitigation that I've been involved with. The size of the building compared to the other ones that I've worked on is smaller. And the amount is commensurate with the square footage that we've been paying on everything else. But I think that my client's understanding of the dilemmas of Depot Street and providing this board with an additional way to mitigate not just the impact of our project, because I believe that's being taken care of by the $400,000, but mitigation in the sense that you now know that there's 28 acres on Depot Street of industrially zoned land that will be set aside as the town wishes. And again, I think that's important to the board. I think that is a really cooperative approach to mitigation. And I'm proud of my client and very pleased with his response when John Kuchis and I have talked to him at length about the special issues relative to Depot Street. So with that, gentlemen, I'm available, as is John, for any questions, and I'm hoping we can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd open up to the board.
The 7,500, is that a yearly donation,
I think that's a one-time donation.
one-time donation?
Yes, that was our understanding.
Thank you for that explanation, Joe. So is there, and I'm asking because I don't know, is there a scenario in which the town has some sort of enforcement action regarding the building permits? Would that waive anything? Or is there any kind of logistical challenges in that regard?
That's a very good question, Ryan. And no, the way in which I've written it is an appeal of the building permit decision. If there is an enforcement action, then that's on my client, I believe. And again, the critical part for us is to get through the appeal period relative to the development plan approval. That's the obvious issue here, because once we get through that, I think the issuance of a building permit and going to completion is simply a matter of good business and good sense, and no one wants to get involved in issues regarding that. It's all controlled construction, so there's really very little issues along those lines. So I feel confident that if a building permit is issued and no appeal is taken, that my client will be able to again secure the rights to purchase that property and make the donation. And I think you'll note, Mr. Salisbury, that I did write the condition. It says, then the applicant shall, at the time of the certificate of occupancy is ready to be issued, make the donation.
Thank you. And then in terms of the cash payment, that would also be paid at the time of the occupancy permit?
Yes, I believe that's the manner in which it's been done in the past. If it's not, then the $300,000 payment would be made, as this board has conditioned payments in the past.
I'm just throwing it out there, just sort of brainstorming. So would your client be willing to further condition his generous contribution with regard to the land, that to the extent there is an appeal, but that appeal is resolved within a certain time frame? So it's an appeal, but it dies on the vine or whatever happens. Would they think about some period of time following an appeal in which the full proposal still remains intact?
We discussed that briefly, and I had to give him the advice that I would give any client, that once an appeal is filed in a land use matter in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, there is no guarantee if, as, and when it will be settled, the length thereof. And I just think that he felt that, that the importance of this for the neighbors needed to be understood in that regard, that this is mitigation for them.
Great. Thank you.
So I apologize for not directly answering your question, but I think that the way we went through it was, if there's an appeal filed, it's off the table. That doesn't mean he can't come back and change his mind, because you get lucky with that. But again, I don't want to put him in a position where it makes it more attractive for someone to appeal the decision. And yes, there is a chill to this. I understand that. But there are also chills to approvals.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the additional information, Joe. Jim, I have a quick question for you. So First of all, just to remind me, what is the timeframe on the appeal period?
So an appeal of this one would be 30 days for a development plan and 20 days for a special permit. So ultimately, to get their full set of permits, it would be 30 days after stamped in with the clerk.
Okay. And if it's appealed, that would go to ZBA in town, correct?
The development plan would go to the ZBA first, yes. So it would be two different tracks, really, but ultimately would probably come together after that, after the first zoning board review.
Okay. Because I completely understand the applicant's standpoint as far as being held up in land court, but I mean, if this is appealed by ZBA, I imagine you feel comfortable and confident that your plans that you're submitting would hold up in an appeal. So if this was appealed by ZBA as well, you're saying that the 27 acres is off the table.
Yes,
correct?
yes. And again, it's because the ability to have a specific date to begin construction will allow my client to begin to market this property for leasing purposes. And it provides economic certainty for him. And any appeal takes the economic certainty out of it and frankly changes the picture.
Okay.
And again, I would just also point out, and I don't mean to be repetitive about this, but unlike many situations where a developer might be donating a parcel of land that was subject to the permit, this parcel is an independent piece. And it's not like we're cutting off of the back end of a huge development and providing open space. This is a separate parcel that is subject to its own development.
So I'm uncomfortable with this. We were talking about a piece of property, 148, that was worth, I think last time the estimate was 700 to $1 million, somewhere in there. But that's asked for a compromise. That portion of it doesn't sound like it was compromised. Yeah, 400 versus the 300. Okay, I see that, but it's nowhere near the value of that property. I was hoping that, you know, there could be some sort of, you know, if it's resolved within a year, then we could move forward with that. But I hear from you that that's not acceptable to your client. You know, there's been quite a few conversations that have happened about hours and things like that, which are certainly part of what we're talking about here. So I hear what you're saying. Thank you for coming and explaining it to us. And that's all I have for now.
Jim, for the people in the room and on Zoom, can you just let us know what happens in the appeal process and what can happen if a decision is rendered?
Sure. So next steps is if the board has exhausted their review, then the hearing would be closed and ultimately a decision would be rendered in a timely manner. If it then gets filed with the town clerk, at that time there's 20 and 30, as I mentioned earlier, depending on the permit, 20 and 30 days that it rests with the clerk. And if there's an appeal, then the applicants notice that there's an appeal, as Rob had pointed out, for a development plan. That goes first to the Zoning Board of Appeals for their review. They can either uphold the decision of the planning board or overturn the decision of the planning board. Then subsequently, the special permits are appealed. It goes to land court. And that could sit there for however long as the applicant has mentioned. That tends to not be a quick turnaround. And so there could be any number of resolutions to that at that point. Similarly, it could be upheld, it could be overturned, it could be remanded back to the board. You know, and if it's remanded back to the board, it's somewhat of a starting over, and looking at it again. So there's a number of different avenues in which it could take, and also it's various timelines as well.
And Jim, just to pick up on your question, the appeal period for a building permit?
Yeah, so I don't know off the top of my head. I want to say it's 30 days. I could get that for you before any decisions rendered. I believe it's 30 days from after the building permit decision has been issued.
Jim, let me ask you a couple of questions. Number one, if it's appealed, the appeal will be based on the fact that the party appealing believes we made an inaccurate decision based on properly permitting something we built, a warehouse, in an industrial area, correct?
Well, it could be any number of reasons for an appeal. You know, whoever appeals would have to make that declaration.
We have gone through the process and followed, as we've all articulated to the people here and on Zoom, we've gone through the process of properly vetting this. If this is appealed, there is nothing to preclude the applicant from, number one, not giving us the land, and number two, building on that property, correct? He would reserve his rights for that property.
Correct.
And also, if it was to go through the proper channel and the appellant party was to lose, any mitigation we have negotiated, I believe, in essence, sort of goes away.
Well, it would need to be renegotiated.
Okay,
Potentially.
okay. So right now, I think we're in a conundrum here. Joe, I want to come back to a couple of things. I think your figure is a little short, to be very honest and frank. I don't think it's short if we have the land. If we don't have the land, I think it's somewhat short. We recently in town sold a warehouse for, I believe, either, Amy, was it 91 or $97 million?
I think it was 97.
97. I realize it's bigger. I know the applicant is in the job of making money. But if I'm using that as a baseline, I'm thinking this building could be worth between 58 and 62, 63 million dollars. So I was hoping without the land, the mitigation package could be in the neighborhood of around $600,000. I think it is to the benefit of the town, and I don't want inferred that I'm intimidating anyone in this room or Zooming. It's a benefit of the town that this land be donated to the town to create a buffer. So I think we have to discuss where we are right now.
The land to me and the buffer that it creates in the open space, and it's a very generous offer. And I thank the applicant for that, but I think it's a critical component to making this fit to the extent that it can. But
As do I.
Right.
I'm hoping the neighbors agree with the buffer.
And a very real scenario is that it appeals. It, for whatever reason, the appellant loses. and it comes back to us, comes back to the town and they construct the exact building structure they were going to, but then the land doesn't come with it anymore.
Correct.
So that, to me, it's a unique situation in that mitigation is contingent on
Mhm.
other people exercising their rights
Mhm.
to appeal.
Which is their due right.
Right, so it's a conundrum.
Yeah, I just feel uncomfortable conditioning based on an appeal. I understand where you're coming from, but I mean, the town nor the applicant has any control over that appeal. It's just comes with the territory of developing land, and it's the applicant's choice to develop this land. So I don't know. I agree. I think that the 27 acres is a huge factor. And, I know this site that you're proposing, you want it to be 24 hours. I think, a vegetated 27.5 acre buffer is to great benefit to, the town and the abutters. That's what I have to say about that.
I think I stated basically the same thing earlier, so I feel the same way.
Nick, I don't want to put you on the spot by any means. Any thoughts?
And I think the board's betting on a gamble. We move forward with this. I think that we're unsure if the residents are going to appeal.
Mhm.
I don't know if the board should be making a decision on something that isn't quite sure.
I think I'd like to open it to the public. Jim, on the mitigation package right now, and only the mitigation package this evening. We've had an opportunity to sit here for 6 months.
Now, when you say mitigation package, I never received a mitigation package, and I believe I am on a butter on that.
It is not provided to the butters. Does anyone have a copy they want sent out? Provide, I can hand my copy, hold on. Just make sure I haven't written any notes on here.
That's fine.
I
I
apologize.
haven't received any communication from the.
Here you are.
Thank you very much.
Oh, you can pass another one around. I would just like to get that back. So while you're reading through that, tonight's discussion is on the mitigation package. We've discussed traffic, we discussed noise. We have, vetted this for, 6 months.
What about the pollution of the diesel fuel that we sniff every day while the trucks are coming by? Are parking in front of our house. The cancer that our parents have died from sniffing the air that we breathe in Bellingham. We owe it to ourselves to stop these trucks from, 130 more trucks. That's, maybe I'll get 10 years out of walking the streets of Bellingham, maybe not. It's a lot of, it's pollution. It's sad. We're all catching cancer in this town, and it's from all the traffic and everything else that these buildings are bringing to us. And I'm sorry to bring us off track now, but that's how I feel.
Okay, I appreciate that. I don't want to get into
Right, I get it.
a discussion on cancer
I open
because
my doors
it's
up and that's always
environmental,
diesel.
okay? And it's hit my family
Right,
dramatically.
right,
So I don't think that's a discussion
okay,
we want to have right now.
right.
But it is
It's
impacted.
environmental, the footprint. What are we
I
doing with our
understand,
carbon
ma'am.
copy of the footprint in Bellingham? We're destroying the environment, basically. I mean, it's crazy. I get it. I'm sorry. I didn't mean. to-
Remember, that's fine. Gentleman in the white shirt, again,
I don't.
please try to keep it to tonight's topic?
Let me just say, at some point before a decision is rendered, I'd like to be able to summarize everything. So if it's not now,
So we've had summaries every night. We've been here for 6 months.
well, I haven't been able to fully summarize it because it's always been said we're pressed for time. So at some point, that's all.
So this board has been very generous.
And we've been very patient.
to the
and we've been
public.
full of work.
Okay, so
So on the mitigation, let me just say this. I understand the whole thing with the mitigation package, but what the point I want to make is that no matter how much mitigation you discuss, it still doesn't change the fact that what we're dealing with now with 2 warehouses is unacceptable. So you're gonna add a 3rd warehouse, and no matter what mitigation you do, it's not gonna take the unacceptable that we're dealing with now and rise it to an acceptable level. You've got 2 warehouses close together, we're proposing a 3rd one, and you know how I feel about mitigation. The whole definition of mitigation is to lessen the pain of something from a bad outcome. But we're doing this ass backwards. We're saying, we know this is probably gonna be a bad outcome, so let's see.
we've never said that.
Well, I'm saying it.
Fine.
I'm saying it. It's a bad outcome. Because if we have 2 warehouses now on Depot Street that are a bad outcome, then what makes us think that a 3rd warehouse within walking distance is going to change that? The mitigation isn't, you know what the mitigation should be? This is what it should be. We've laid out a real good argument that those 2 warehouses were. We went through all the reasons why, and I won't go through them again, but we went through them all. You know what the mitigation is? Not to put up a 3rd one. There's your mitigation, but we're doing this backwards. And I get the whole 148 thing, but why would we add something in that doesn't make any sense? You know, it's not going to change things. If you could convince me and the rest of us that putting in this warehouse with the mitigation is going to take what we're dealing with now, which is unacceptable, and put that to an acceptable level, listen, I'm done, you know, tip the scales in their favor, but it's not. It's common sense. And you know the whole adage, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. Well, Duncan and Best Buy are the fool me once and fool me twice examples. The town has already had the shame on me on them because of the warehouses on Depot Street outside the industrial park, putting these large scale warehouses in the midst of a residential area. That's why we have the problems now. And I'm going to say this, and this is not just for you. This is for, I gear this toward every single person in this room and in this town when I say this. We can't be so naive, stupid, or incompetent to think that putting this warehouse in isn't going to be a fool me 3-time event and a shame on the town on a 2nd event. It's proven. It's proven over and over again. And you know, I've got the information here on. Let me just throw this out. I told you 3 months ago that our home values get affected by things like this. We were in the bottom 5. Well, 2021 just came up. Guess what? Bellingham is in the rock bottom of home values out of 153 communities. Brockton, Mass.
Crazy.
Sin City, Lynn, all of them are higher than ours. These are all contributions to what's happening with our home values. It is. I've got articles here that says, we've got folks, throughout the country that are locals fight to keep warehouses out of the neighborhoods. It's nothing new, and we just want it stopped. That's all. And as a board, as an elected board, who we vote for, that we believe is going to act in our best interest, be an extension of our voice, and talk, the few speak for the many, we want you to have our back. And we're telling you it's unacceptable. The mitigation package doesn't rise to the level of making this unacceptable. I mean, making it acceptable. It just doesn't. I got plenty more I can say, but I'm not going to right now.
No, if you, I don't want to be accused of.
No, that's my point. It doesn't make any sense. And I'll say this, when we have an industrial, and you may disagree with this, if we have an industrial zone piece of property and we have an industrial building, if you look at it through a narrow lens, you might say, yeah, it you know, it meets the criteria, it fits on the property, it meets the setbacks, the height of it, you know, the drainage, what have you. But when you start to open up that wide angle lens and look at what's happened in the town as it's built out, then you look at things differently and you say, does this make sense or doesn't? It doesn't make sense. And I for one believe that an industrial zoned piece of property doesn't mean that you can have a large scale, heavily industrialized building on it. You put it in an industrial park, put whatever you want on it. But when you have an industrial piece of property in the midst of a residential area, then perhaps maybe a light or medium industrial building might be better suited. I have no problem with that argument and fighting for that. I mean, I'm not saying don't build there. Someone has a right to build, but build the proper building for the infrastructure that's around there and learn the lesson that we've learned from Dunkin' and Best Buy, not to screw up again.
Can you state your name and address? I know if we caught it before.
It's Steve Goyette, and it's 58 Box Pond Road. And let me just add this one thing. I sit on my porch on Box Pond Road, front porch. I can point to the right and hear Best Buy. I
Right.
can point to the left and I can hear
Now for
Dunkin'.
that,
And when I go on my back patio, I hear something that's clanging and banging and backup alarms, and I don't even know where that's coming from. And that's 58 Box Pond Road.
Ma'am in the back,
I'm
could you
sorry.
state your name and address? I don't think we caught
Oh,
it first.
yes. My name is Linda Monroe, and I live on 27 Hartford Ave, next to the tracks.
Okay.
So I hear the humming all night long.
All right,
24/7, another Best Buy, not Best Buy, but another Dunkin's. We're gonna be up all night long. All night long.
anyone else?
I'll be fast. I appreciate what the board said about, you know, the concerns with this is Jeff Muldoon, 230 Depot, by the way. The concerns with the contingencies that you all have no control over, and I think that's fair, and I think it's a reasonable issue that you all have. I do want to say, when we're looking at the mitigations, right? Part of that mitigation is, of course, the light that is like 200 or 300, it would be 200 or 300 yards maybe from my house. I think that while I 100% agree that Depot and Hartford are an issue, and this is, of course, this is inside your mitigation here, I don't think that until there's a broader understanding of what potential development is going to happen. I know Jim had mentioned that they was looking to use some of the recently or semi-recently passed infrastructure money from the federal government to do some improvements on the road. Until maybe there's some, maybe Jim has some plans or something, maybe the board knows kind of what's in play there. I'm concerned that mitigation isn't really going to mitigate anything, considering that that's considerably more traffic, and then whatever other developments that aren't ours but are still part of our big picture here. I don't know that mitigation really is going to make much of a difference. So I just beg you to think about those two things. Is that mitigation at the intersection going to be enough or appropriate? Is there a better use for it? And also the concern with the essentially poisoned apple, that if it's not from you, from the developer, that if something that is completely out of your control is done, the mitigation that you had negotiated or thought up or whatever you want to say, I'm not sure the proper terminology, is then taken away. To me, that seems like a non-starter, but thank you, I'm done.
Okay,
Unless you want to say something to me, but otherwise.
thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I believe the applicant may have his hand up.
Go ahead.
Good evening again. It's a difficult situation. I recognize it, and I just would like to point out again that it's my understanding from a technical and legal standpoint that the mitigation package is related to the impact that our facility has on the existing conditions, not fixing the problems in a town that existed but for our facility. And so I understand that when the residents complain about other facilities, the fact of the matter is that this property is zoned industrial and it's being permitted for a use that is allowed in the district. The applicant has made significant efforts to make sure that there is mitigation on the property by the building of a sound wall. There has never been any pushback on the part of this applicant as it relates to the conditions that are specific to his property, which is the property that is the subject of the permit. I understand the planning board is going to take a look at the town in general. But again, Mr. Chairman, it's my opinion that the mitigation amount that's been offered, the cash amount that's been offered, is commensurate with the other mitigation packages that have been provided to the board over the past few years based on the impact of those facilities to their particular areas and this facility to the particular area. I do not have authority to agree to $600,000 in mitigation. I certainly don't have authority to agree to $600,000 in mitigation and throw in the parcel of land.
I would not be looking for that, sir.
Okay, I just, again, it's been our position and I've compared this project to the others I've worked on. And I think this board knows I have significant respect for the board and the manner in which you process your applications. You are protective of the town in a difficult situation in New England where we have mixed zoning districts in just about every town in the area. Relative to the donation of the property, again, I was very impressed with my client's willingness to do that. And I have no reservation in again stating that the hesitancy about the appeal is specific. It provides him with the specific timelines to make this property go online and get it done in a way that will work for him. I don't think we can talk about anything else in mitigation relative to a specific project or a specific item. I would think that at some point, the board has got to close this hearing and take a vote. And again, I'm very, very comfortable with the offer that we've made relative to taking 28 odd acres of land and putting it in the town's coffers and take it off the development package. Again, it'll mean for the people on Depot Street that while the problems that you have with your existing warehouses, you won't have a problem with that piece of property. And again, I really don't know what I can add to the discussion in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you.
William Hebert, Foxpond Road, Bellingham. Just got a few things to say. So Salisbury, last meeting we had, you said, we can't bring everything to the board.
Could you go just direct it to the board?
Right, well, this is just something directive of what he said to all of us.
Okay.
Meaning that we can't go to the full board and expect you guys to do everything in town, which you can't, because you guys aren't the zoning, you aren't, concert, you aren't anything like that. But you did say, go out and do something, which we have. We all chipped together. We hired a lawyer with our own money. We put together websites to inform everybody. We also chipped together money to get signs to inform everybody. We pick up the community. We come to these meetings. We do more than that. Now, I have the privilege to talk to an ex-board member and talk over a few things. Now, as residents in this town, we all have the right to the quality of life of our own property. And anything that pushes us from that quality of life is something that we can fight. Now, is this we can fight? Any appeal we can fight. Now, not using the same lawyer as before. I've already spoke to another lawyer about appealing this. So as a form of appeals, anybody can appeal that.
Of course.
That injunctions their life or quality of life. As you can see right now, besides the people that are just developed right behind the development of this, all the people's homes, it's also 500 other people that are on our website that don't want this, let alone people that don't even say about this. So to keep pushing something that we know, which they already graded as an F, in our section of town to keep pushing more is just ridiculous. Now, say you guys go through with this and you guys get the 148 buffer. Is that 148 buffer gonna stay just woods, or is the town gonna use it for other means?
I don't know, sir. That's something we can
So
discuss with
what,
the town.
There's no plans for like the town, like salt places to go over there for loading or anything like that. That's gonna stay a clear buffer for the townspeople. So the point of mitigation is for the townspeople, for the planning board to help the townspeople. It's not to mitigate for the town. The mitigation is for the people. And you guys keep saying, what is the town gonna get? What is the town gonna get? It keeps cranking, keeps offering money left and right. $1 million really isn't much in this town. How fast does that go? What is that really gonna do for the community? It's not gonna do anything. So,
Not our community.
you know. how
I'll do
fast
just
does-
one
how
person
fast
at a
does it
time.
go? It goes like that. So for $1 million to just make all our taxes that we pay for to try to fix our town or whatever, just goes out the window by sticking another one of these properties in this place that we can't stand already. The road structure is horrible now. If you guys are gonna fix the road structures and then bring in 160 more trucks or whatever and promise to fix the roads and fix what is already wrong with our town, we don't even have a fire hydrant out there. As they said last week, there's no fire hydrant down there. You can't even drive down that road without hitting a pothole. I don't know how many times you've come to fix the potholes, which sure, that has nothing to do with it now, but if we can't fix what the residents have problems with in this community already, why are we gonna tend to these people that are doing all these loopholes to go around what they can for the town and for the people? It's not for the people. It's not gonna help them whatsoever. Now, he also said we're the ones that decided to live in this community, and we did. But as I told you before I built this house, I have 6 acres over here. Before I built this house, I went to the zoning and I went to the concert, and they both told me after the monstrosities that went up over there, there's no way that the board or town is gonna pass anything to go over across the street. So I had no worries at the time, so I built. And that's why I'm in this community, is because I was told by your zoning and your conserve that there was nothing else going over there, or I would have moved down to Mendon and got the farm that I was looking at before. But I wanted the nice waterfront that I had. I love my neighbor, all our neighbors now. We get together and I hate it. It feels like we're fighting our own town. And I don't want to fight our own town. It was 70 degrees up. We all wanted to barbecue in our backyards. We didn't want to be here. I'm sure none of you guys want to fight till this, just for one more place to go up for, even if they crank it to $1 million, you know, how is that gonna help all of us? That's.
Thank you. Mr. Hamlin.
Ken Hamway, 39 Weathersfield Road. Mitigation is the next step to approval, okay? That's a given. It's mitigation, it's not gonna eliminate negative impacts, it's just gonna lighten them a little. There's always gonna be impacts, whether you have mitigation or not. I remember being here 4 or 5 months ago, and some woman got up and said she's having urine bottles full of soda pop bottles full of urine being tossed.
absolutely.
I mean, let's get real. Let's get real.
Driveway, it's crazy.
None of you guys would trade places with them. I know that. It's obvious. Why don't we start talking about quality of life instead of mitigation? And let's change an old adage, folks. 2's company, 3 warehouses is a crowd. Okay, let's start thinking about people's quality of life. Look, I'll tell you something I told Jim when I was in my 30s. It's great to see taxes low. Well, I was a little older than 30 because Jim hasn't been here that long. But Jim will tell you, I was a big, keep the taxes low, guys, because I don't think I get what I should get for the kind of taxes I pay, even though they're lower than other communities. But my God, as you get older, and I'm 78 now, I put, it's countless what I would pay for quality of life. These people have got a rotten quality of life. It's bad with two warehouses, and you've got a power plant there and a concrete plant in the other on Hartford Avenue. These people are stricken, but I don't think you guys care. And I don't mean that negatively. I think you want to care, but oh, it's industrial. This is an industrial project. It's all fine. Let me tell you something. It isn't fine, and it really ruins our town.
Anyone else? Anyone on via Zoom?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, first, we do have Casey and then the applicant, I believe, as well.
Casey?
Hi, Casey Pettifa Haggerty, 226 Depot Street. I do kind of hate the fact that the mitigation package, a huge part of it, is contingent on me not exercising my right to appeal. That is very bothersome to me. I haven't seen whatever document you guys were passing around in person. I can't read it over the screen.
Is that posted online?
That document, no, that document is not.
Okay, well,
No, that one is not.
Why was that not posted online? Just
because we haven't voted on it yet.
No, nothing's been voted on. That hasn't been. No.
Anyway, so just based on what's been said so far, a lot of the mitigation, and I said this last time, seems to be focused on traffic flow, not traffic volume. And I think that's one of the issues that many of us are having is traffic volume. A light may improve the traffic flow in the area, but it's not going to limit the volume of traffic on Depot Street. It's not going to limit the volume of traffic being added to Hartford Ave. Currently, there are 2.3 vehicles per minute during peak PM hours. Based on their traffic study, with no build conditions, that goes up to 2.5 vehicles per minute. If they build, that's 3.383 vehicles per minute. That's an entire vehicle per minute in peak hours. A vehicle every 17 seconds. So yes, I want traffic to flow nicely. And I know that they're not responsible for fixing some of the issues down at the Best Buy warehouse. We just don't want it to repeat up at 152. But how does that light reduce the volume of traffic on Depot Street? How does that mean that there is not, 17, or I think I said, yeah, a vehicle every 17 seconds, whether that's a passenger vehicle or a fifth wheel, a tractor trailer truck. So that's what I'm not hearing in this mitigation package, is how to deal with some of these issues that will be created by them directly. This is not them fixing an issue that already exists. It's how are they going to mitigate the issues that they will create. And in this case, that is a significant increase in traffic. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have the specific answers. The applicant wants to speak and then.
Yes, thank you again, Mr. Chair. What I would like you to know is that to the extent that anyone is concerned about what would happen to the land, the applicant will accept a condition that the donation be made with land use restrictions, that you can tell us what you don't want to happen on that land, and we will deed it to you with those restrictions. So I think that, relative to it being used for purposes that might be intrusive to the neighborhood, I certainly, again, and the intent of the applicant is to have it be left in a conservation type of state with a conservation restriction or land use restrictions. I don't think that the applicant for one second intended to donate it so that the town would put a town barn there and then be in the neighbor's backyards. He recognizes that the donation is something specific for the neighborhood. And again, I listened to some of the earlier comments about mitigation being aimed at places other than the neighborhood. I think this is the first opportunity that your board has had to accept a mitigation package with a specific donation that affects the neighborhood in which this development sits. Many of the other mitigation packages are a mile down the street at a light or widening of a lane 500 or 600 yards away from the intersection. This is a mitigation offer that is going to have a significant effect on the people who are, who live in the area. And I think, again, that the board, who I think has a difficult time dealing with this situation, because you listen to the residents. If you didn't listen to them, you wouldn't be having a difficult time tonight. Because again, I think the applicant has demonstrated that it meets all of
Excuse me,
the,
ma'am. Excuse me.
Sorry.
No one interrupted you when you were speaking.
meets all of the requirements of the bylaw. And so I think that the board struggles with this because it listens carefully to the residents. So again, I would reiterate that the board has no authority to impose an obligation on an applicant to donate land. The cases on that are very clear. The board has a right under its bylaw to seek mitigation based on the impact that this development will have on the streets. And again, I think the mitigation package is sufficient in that regard. But additionally, from what I heard about the concern about other mitigation package, this is your opportunity as a board to take a gift that will have a positive impact on the people that you're listening to tonight. So again, I don't know what else I can tell you in that regard. I can repeat for the record, and I have no problem, is it that if the decision is appealed, and again, I heard what was said, everybody has a right to do it. The condition doesn't take away anyone's right. What it does is it changes the economic picture for my client and makes that donation impractical and impossible. And I really don't know how to summarize it other than that. We're not intending to take away anyone's rights. Are we hopeful that you don't appeal? Absolutely. Of course we are. Okay. But do we know that you could appeal anyway? Absolutely know that also. So again, I don't know what else to say in that regard. And I don't think that I'm in a position to give you any further money as long as the land is on the table. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, I do see Casey one more time.
So I do want to just say, no, you're not taking away my right to appeal with this mitigation package, but you're essentially making me choose between two terrible decisions. Have a warehouse within sight, less than 400 feet from my house, without me taking every opportunity I could to stop it from happening, or screw over my neighbors on Box Pond Road and myself with the possibility of future development. Neither of those are good options. And the fact that you don't see that as taking away my right is, you're right, you're not. You're not saying you are not allowed to appeal. You're saying if you appeal, nothing good comes of it. There is no hope for anything good coming of this if you lose your appeal. If I take my right to appeal and I lose, you basically means that all of us get screwed over.
No.
Now, second to that, I do have one other comment.
Certainly.
According to the town bylaws, there is a limit for what is acceptable for traffic on a collector street and on the receptor streets. And the current plan does not meet those standards. It says during peak hours, if it is more than a 30% increase, then you can reject it outright or have them mitigate the traffic more. And, a 40%, 45% increase in traffic in peak times, 35% in AM. I might have that backwards. Let me double check. Yeah, 35 in evening, 45 in morning far exceeds a 30% increase in traffic. So the statement that it meets the decision standards would be false, unless you have additional mitigation regarding traffic volume that you have not shared. That's all I can say. I'm sorry.
Please don't apologize. Please don't
sorry,
apologize.
what's that?
I said that was awesome. Thank you.
All right, I'll be quiet now.
No, please don't apologize. What we want to do is let everyone know the appeal process and what happens. That's all. we don't want to discourage you. You have your right to appeal.
And I think that's my point,
You absolutely.
is
have the right
that
to appeal.
the applicant is trying, essentially by holding this mitigation package hostage, is saying, we don't want you to appeal. And that's what rubs me the wrong way. I had something else that I was gonna say before any of this happened, and I totally
Okay.
forgot it. So I might raise my hand again,
You-
but,
okay, we're gonna give you a couple more minutes. Yeah, I appreciate all your input. I know you've been very helpful in this process. And has not gone unnoticed by the board as of all of you. And we appreciate that. Could you address her concerns in regards to the traffic?
I think relative to traffic, and the traffic engineer isn't here today because I think we've been talking about that for months and months and months. And
Okay.
I think all of the traffic information was presented. You know, there was tens of thousands of dollars of peer review fees that were then reviewed to make sure the information that was presented was in fact done properly and accurately.
Correct.
So from a traffic standpoint, I think everything was done appropriately. There's really nothing more I can say to that.
So
I'd like to entertain a motion and close the public hearing or.
Actually, before that happened, there was one open thing we had open
Go
from
ahead.
this previous discussions with mitigations. Now we're gonna move on that. We had a discussion about the truck turnaround, and you guys were gonna look at the truck turnaround, moving it a little bit further away from the end of the building. I didn't see that in these new drawings. So I was wondering where you fell on that.
The circle did not move any closer. It stayed where it was, and we looked at moving it. It puts it essentially too close to the office area that we had in there.
Well, bringing it
into the site. And then relative to that, though, it wouldn't have made a difference in that from a sound standpoint. It was fully mitigated where it was from the board asking us to put the sound wall up, extend the sound wall both height and length. So that mitigated any sound from behind that building to be fully within your bylaw.
It didn't go to zero. We were asking just to bring it back.
But it went fully within the requirements of the bylaw.
I hear what you're saying. So it is as is.
It's as is, that's correct.
So next steps, is that what we're talking about?
I'm sorry?
Next steps, is that what?
Yeah.
So the options are to close the public hearing or continue the hearing until next
Meeting and see if we can fine tune any language between now and then.
with regard to the conditions and mitigation, things like that. Maybe that's what we do.
Mr. Chairman, if I may make a recommendation?
Certainly.
So if the board has exhausted their review and no additional information is requested, I would ask that the board close the hearing. You don't have to render a decision tonight, obviously. You could certainly direct me to start drafting a decision for your consideration.
Yep.
Or you could close the hearing and then at the next meeting ask to draft a decision. It's wholly up to the board.
I'd like to entertain.
Just one. Just one.
I call you on my bad eye, so go ahead.
Darcy Mazer, 56.
You're the last person to speak.
Road. Quick question, are they still going to be operating 24/7?
Or are we holding to the 9 to 5, like we said?
Joe, can you address that? Mr. Antonellis?
Having difficulty unmuting myself here, sorry. My understanding is the applicant has requested that the operational of the facility be 24/7, and that is still the request of the applicant.
Thought we were holding them responsible for the 9 to 5 from the very beginning, our first.
This is the package we tried to negotiate.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, I've been the board has been looking at that piece of property since the beginning of the second meeting, when errors were made. And we tried to make them, you heard what we said. And then we've tried to do the best we can with what we have to work with. I'd like a motion to close the public hearing.
So, Bill, with regard to closing.
I'm sorry?
I'm not against closing.
Okay.
But I would give, with a caveat that the gentleman, I forget his name, he wanted one last opportunity to summarize his position. I wouldn't want to necessarily deny him that opportunity, perhaps not tonight. We can move to the next meeting. And
Oh, no, I'd like to probably do it. Mr. Gaia,
Yes.
is that the gentleman?
Yeah, he wanted to make a summarize, right, correct?
Yeah.
A closing argument.
I got through a number of points, but if I may, I'd like to add, and then you won't have to hear from me again.
But that's not the intent, not to hear
I know,
from you
I'm
again.
just saying. First, I want to say that what I don't agree with is the notion that you have to work within a box and you're forced to make a decision one way or another. You can disagree with me. But the point I want to make is that as voters and residents of the town, we're in that box that you're restricted to. We're not outside the box. And the decision that's made should be reflective of what the townspeople want, as long as it's justified. And I believe that we've made a justified argument why this shouldn't take place. I also believe that you can look at the town as you open up the lens and not just look at an individual project, but as a cumulative project, or cumulative effect, I should say. That's what planning boards do. You know, if you just look at, you know, a single project, you know, with the narrow focus and look at the property and it's zoned industrial, so we can put an industrial zone building on it, why do you have a planning board? All you need is someone to, you know, go down a checklist and say, yep. It's the wide angle lens that you have to look at. And, you know, and I'll just summarize this too. You know, denying this to go through, you know, you shouldn't have your hands tied. We've untied your hands to be able to do this. There are other towns that have been in the exact same position and have turned them down. Not because it didn't check the boxes for the industrial zone property with the industrial zone building, but it didn't check the right boxes outside of the area of the property when they opened up the wide angle lens. It's being done all the time. And Holliston did it, you know, Mendon and Hopedale are going through the whole issue right now. I personally am very concerned if the board thinks that you have no choice but to approve this. I don't see how that can be. You know, if our voices didn't matter, then then why do we have an elected board? You know, and we've been loud and clear. And I'll just say this: we haven't had a single person in this town come forward and say, you know, this is a good thing. Let's do it. Not a single person. And when an applicant comes into this town and wants to propose a building on an industrial piece of land, the truth of the matter is the scales should be in our favor at the beginning of the process. You know, we're residents here, we have a right to quiet enjoyment of our homes. So in the beginning of the process, it should be in our favor. You know, and then the fact that it's industrial property with an industrial building, that just gets you up to the batter's box. That doesn't tip the scales. I almost get the impression that he's saying, industrial zone build area, industrial zone building, we have no choice. That just gets you up to the batter's box. Now you got to show us how you tip the scales out of our favor. And how do you do that? You show us that it doesn't adversely affect traffic or pollution or safety or noise or community character or our home values. That tips the scales out of our favor and into theirs. And if all of that's true and it doesn't, then we wouldn't have an issue with it. But this applicant, I'm sorry, did not tip the scales in their favor. And no amount of mitigation is going to change that. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Can I say one more thing, Mr. Chairman? It will be very, very brief. Why are you making a face like that?
I've heard very brief from you quite a bit. Sometimes it's not so brief.
I will be brief.
I never said yes, but go ahead. I can't stop you.
I'll wait till you say yes.
Now go ahead.
I respect government and I respect bullets. I served for 6 years and was an elected official on the board of the library trustees. We made a lot of good decisions, I felt. Some maybe we should have done better. I just want you to know this. This is the image. If you approve this, this is not the legacy, but it's the image you have around town. I heard this the other day and I agree with it. 2 weeks ago here, the 3 articles that have to go to town meeting for your recommendation, either for or against the Hartford Avenue coffee shop, country store, whatever. You have recommended that coffee shop and a country store, you have recommended not to okay that at a town meeting. And you're gonna okay a 3rd warehouse, maybe it's the 10th in town, I haven't counted, but maybe we're in double figures with warehouses. We certainly look like a truck stop all over town. So you're a coffee shop and a country store has got you all bent out of shape, let's say, mildly bent out of shape. But now you're going to approve this thing. You know what they're saying about this board out in the street? I hate to tell you because I've heard it. You do yourself a great disservice if that's what happens, that you're afraid of a country store, but you love warehouses. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So with that, I move to close the public hearing.
Have a second. Motion on the floor to close the public hearing. I'll see, all in favor, please. Well, first of all, any more discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, that motion passes unanimously. So right now, we're left with a decision. Do we have Jim draft a decision or do we postpone and go back to the drawing table before the next meeting?
I have to think that there is some that perhaps we can look at the land issue closer. And perhaps there's an opportunity to be found some compromise there because I would suggest that we delay any sort of decision or ask Jim till the next meeting. So further discussion.
She'd like to hold off on any further action till the second meeting.
Right, and we can look at more closely into the proposal, mitigation proposal that we presented.
Any other discussion?
I agree with that.
It's fair. I agree.
I know you're not voting, but your opinion.
I agree on that.
Okay.
I just say one, and everybody here who's listening, from a kind of a next step legal, how does this all play out? And something to consider in evaluating this, I know that the board considers this as well, is best case, worst case. If the board is to deny the project, best case, if that was the position of the board, best case would be the applicant would simply walk away. And you live to fight another day. You have 2 parcels of land that's industrial zone. It will be developed industrial unless the town rezones it. But if someone, an applicant comes, the first gentleman that we heard from today, who we got a disagreement regarding whether or not to extend the decision deadline. We, the town, rezoned the area of where his parcels were, where he wants to develop his land. We rezoned it. He filed this plan, which he has absolutely no intention of building. We filed it and he froze his zoning for 8 years. So, best case, worst case. Board denies it. Applicant may or may not go away. That zoning is probably frozen as industrial land for 8 years. I suspect that those both parcels will likely be developed in some way within those 8 years. I don't have a crystal ball, none of us do. I just thinking into it. If we deny the application, the applicant who spent a significant amount of money, I imagine, on preparing plans and engineers and lawyers and meetings, they will likely appeal. Worst case, best case. If we, the town, can't articulate a reason that is objective, the traffic, peer review has said that they fall within the engineer working for the town said they meet these requirements. The drainage people say they meet these requirements. So if we're not able to objectively defend our decision to deny the plan, this project comes to the town without the mitigation, without any mitigation at all. So, and I don't have a crystal ball, but I'm thinking, just guessing, that if I was going to wager on whether or not the town could win that case, I don't know where I think that falls. Because I don't think that, and I know that we have to look globally, and I welcome that conversation, I really do. I do think the town has to fundamentally rethink its zoning and where we position our commercial and our industrial and our residential, absolutely. And that's a conversation that we've all been having for the past 10 years. But that, we can't do that now, right? Because we're stuck with what we got. So my guess is that an appeal of a denial of the decision would likely come back to us. So you have to deal with the cards you're given. And it's not that, believe me, I agree. There are too many warehouses. I have absolutely agree with not. If it was strictly up to me and I could magic wand, no more warehouses. So understand that as we enter this sort of final phase of this, we're trying to do the best we can with the information we have and with the legal opinions that we have, and living in the world that we talk about. So I just wanted you to all know that it's a tough decision, so just understand and appreciate that, and we're not looking to stick it to anybody.
We're aware.
So technically, the
right
public,
thing wouldn't stop. You wouldn't stop doing the right thing because you're afraid of what possibly could happen. Because at the end of the day, as long as this is how it's looked at, then the town is an easy target for other development that we don't want because, for the lack of a better word, you gave in for what, you thought might happen, that.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, but I thought the meeting was closed.
yes, it is.
Okay, all right, I'm sorry.
I didn't want to interrupt you, sir.
No, that's fine.
Sorry, I ad-libbed.
Okay. I'll be very brief. We've listened to everything you've said. Within the past 7 days, I've had an opportunity to reach out to the police department, and you will see some more coverage there in the morning hours in regards to the traffic. That discussion took place last Tuesday. I was told anytime you see more concerns with traffic, please call them and they will send someone down. I don't know, somehow, the perception is this has become an adversarial relationship. I don't believe it is. Okay, we've listened to, everything you've said. We are, I know people don't want to hear about having our hands tied or being in a box, but I agree with everything Attorney Salisbury just articulated. And we're trying to work through this process. I want to thank all of you, although I keep looking to my left, for your input on this. It's been valuable and appreciated, and we do want to continue. But at this point, the public meeting is closed. There's a motion on the floor. All in favor of continuing to the next meeting, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes unanimously. This will be continued to the next meeting. May 26th, I believe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As you leave, can you just close the doors? And again, thank you very much for coming forward. Can you get the other copy? Okay. Are those all the copies? What?
Want me to post it online?
Mr. Chairman.
It's not official though. That's not any official.
That is a
engagement.
draft now.
That's a draft.
It's not, yeah,
It's not
binding.
Yeah, it's not.
You want to break, Dennis?
Yeah.
We'll take a 5-minute break. Next item on the agenda is a continued public hearing on 206 Mechanic Street. On this, again, we spent over 6 months reviewing the project proposed to us. We've requested a list of draft conditions to confirm they encapsulate everything that's been discussed to date. Jim, can you bring us up to date before we ask to hear from the applicant?
Absolutely. I think you did a good job already. The board has reviewed this project pretty extensively. At the last meeting, draft conditions were requested to just confirm that, I have an understanding of where the board stands with each of the items and the mitigation measures that have been discussed before. So you do have that list. If there's any edits or comments or things that I've omitted, I'm happy to add or correct, or you can send those directly to me after the meeting as well.
You give us the highlights, Jim?
Absolutely, not a problem. So, as we discussed, some of these are our standard language that we do from time to time. This in talking about modifications, if a major change to any proposal that's on site would then have to come back to the board and in turn a public hearing, which would invite the neighborhood out to offer opinion. Number 2 talks to the extension of the turn lane at the intersection after extensive review with our peer review engineer. The recommended outcomes resulted in that extension. The thought process that had been discussed at least was that the applicant would do that rather than a payment in lieu of the action for the town to do. This is an opportunity for the applicant as they own that frontage, so it would be in everyone's really best interest for them to do that work. So that's a pretty substantial extension of that turn lane, 230 feet approximately as laid out. The next one talks about that Welcome to Bellingham wall that we've all had an opportunity to see some early conceptuals. I asked for the applicant to provide an exhibit, which you do have in your package, that kind of gives you the parameters a little better. I think last time we were still talking about concepts, and so we're talking about approximately 90 linear feet of stone, potentially stone wall, that is, with a design similar in the manner that was presented at the last meeting. A thought that I would like to kick to the board for discussion before any closing of a hearing is maybe having a subcommittee established for that wall. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, I concur, and I've reached out to a few people in town.
Oh, good. Okay, so I'll let you discuss that further, but I just wanted to bring that up. The next one talks about the conceptual elevations that are presented. I think one of the neighbors brought up a really good point about this being a feature element to Welcome to Bellingham. So the elevation should be of a style that has some quality and character, and as such, requiring the applicant to provide that office look that was presented in a manner very similar, at least, to that look, and we define it in this condition, as well as that relief that was discussed, the transition from the facade panels, making sure that there is some depth to it, because I think one of the neighbors brought up a really good point of that allowing for some real, you could tell the quality when there's some depth to it. Number 5 talks to the cleanup initiative that the board has introduced to the town, a one-time donation of $7,500 to go towards roadside cleanup in the area. So that would be a secondary, we talked about it a little bit at the last project, and this would be our second one that could contribute to that fund. And this could be something, I think it's a great idea to get started, and a way we could bring some revenue to do some real roadside cleanup all across town. Again, comprehensive signage package for the site itself, and this one specifically requiring that no wall signage be displayed on Mechanic and Maple Street. So there could be the monument sign per se, but no wall signage on the building, because we want, again, this is going to be our Welcome to Bellingham introduction. Now it does leave it for the dock side if there is necessary wall signage, but it eliminates any wall signage on the 2 main fronts. And then we get into some of the standard controls here, erosion controls that need to be monitored and set up. Hours of operation for construction purposes. So I think the board, once we close the hearing, may want to get into discussion about these days and times to make sure that they work for all parties. Fencing, our standard condition to make sure that the wildlife can get through, just raising it up slightly. Our standard controls for dust measures, and if construction ceases over time, to make sure that the ground is stabilized. All exterior lighting be dark sky compliant. Enhanced measures from what we've typically done in terms of snow removal and maintenance on site, and detention basin operation and maintenance. Some, it's slight enhanced measures that we've kind of learned and adapted over the years. Snow and ice removal from the site, including the commercial vehicles. I know that was a big topic that was brought up, and a good point. And then just, again, our standard administrative language from that point on.
Thank you. I'll turn it over to the applicant.
Good evening. So I think that
It's been
was
a long night. Thank you for coming back.
It's nice to see you all again. Thank you, For the summary, I think that's very accurate. I think, Mr. Chairman, you had started off saying it's been a long process. A lot of information has gone back and forth. We presented a lot of information. You had a lot of very good comments. I think we worked collaboratively to come up with a plan set, which I think I said this last thing. I'll say it again. I think it's better than what we started with. So it's always a sign that the process is working. At this point, I think we've addressed every comment that we've heard. We've provided, all the peer review comments have been addressed. We provided exhibits needed to support the mitigation, the decision, so everything's clear. And really, we can just answer any questions that you might have.
Okay.
At this point, I think we presented everything.
This probably doesn't have anything to do with this. I was just wondering, can you just clarify it again? That's a one-time, I know the donations making, which is greatly appreciated, the 7,500. Just looking at the future of how do we keep replenishing that?
Well, what we're talking about down the road is forming a committee to, I think we're looking at like the Bellingham Clean Street Initiative and asking for donations on an annual basis. That calculation will be determined by the people in town. And then looking to implement something to keep our streets clean, because we've heard that from neighbors on Maple Street and obviously on.
Yeah, I know under the conditions here that the applicant, whoever that buys that building will have to keep it well maintained outside.
And again, we would encourage a donation, but again, it's only a donation, we cannot.
Exactly. Okay. Thank you.
I have a couple questions, and probably mostly for Jim. Jim, with regard to the conditions, there was talk, Liz discussed at the last meeting about conditions or lease requirements that would say.
I'm sorry, you broke up a little bit there.
There was discussion previously, and the applicant has agreed to incorporate something in a decision that any leases or with tenants that would have some requirements about. And I don't even know.
I believe it was exiting and entering.
Yeah, there was lease provisions that were going to flow from the decision down to the tenant.
I think what you might have said at one point, sir, was if someone did not comply, what the traffic was flowing or came in a different direction, you could take appropriate action, and you feel comfortable that could be written into a decision.
Yeah, and Attorney Feldman, we gave Jim an example of language for that, if I remember correctly, in our exchange.
That's correct, Wayne. Hi, Paul Feldman for the applicant. I drafted a proposed condition that we submitted to Jim a couple of weeks ago that addressed that exact point. I thought it got incorporated into the conditions that Jim put together, but it may have gotten missed somehow. But
understandable.
Yeah, but it's available. And Jim, I don't know if you got it into your draft conditions or it just got dropped because it came as a separate email.
Yeah, that is accurate. Attorney Feldman did provide it. It should be in that. It's not in the draft that you received. I'll absolutely get it for you for an updated one.
I'm sorry, Jim, how long have you been here? This is your first mistake? My Lord. That's impressive.
It wasn't, he was testing us.
Okay, I knew.
So, so then I guess that's a follow-up question to that is, Jim, is the turning, the certain areas turn in certain ways, is that also a condition, or is that built into the plan itself, or how does that work?
Well, it would be both. I believe Attorney Feldman did address some of that in his condition that we will include, but also in the design of the plan. And I'm sure our engineer John can address that. But yes, as it was designed, as the board has discussed, certainly the suggested amendments to the plan will help with that issue.
Yeah, that is true. We would modify the plans to update the radii and the islands and all that based on the discussions that we had, just to make sure we're forcing the traffic to go the way that we intended it to go. So we added islands and changed the materials on the island based on some comments.
And then with regard to the facade, did we see, or did we ask, I don't know if we asked for it, but did we see a revised facade with more of a relief and all that? Did we get that?
We didn't get an updated elevation reflecting it, but I tried to capture it in the condition number 4, I believe, which shows the exhibit specifically. There's 2 exhibits demonstrating the glass office areas. So it's requiring essentially 3 locations for those glass office areas, as well as constructing substantially in conformance with the exhibit with close care to quality and character, window locations, and the depth shall be evident in the transition across. There shall be at least 1 other window location. Oh, well, I would take a look at 4. Let me know if you think that captures what you're thinking. And if not, we can certainly enhance it before any decisions rendered.
Yeah.
My only question, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, if I may, to remind the board, when we first presented the rendering, the office type windows was on the, Maple Street mechanic side of the building. And as we progressed through the hearing process, we were talking about the aesthetics of the building. The applicant committed to that same corner to be as you approach the other end of the building on Maple Street. And that, and I don't know, Wayne, you'll remind me if we had a rendering that actually did that. And then we
Can we
actually,
bring up, excuse me, can we pull up the rendering? Is that feasible?
Yes.
Okay, good. Go ahead, sir, continue.
yeah, and then we added a 3rd location in the middle of the building. And the only thing that we requested in the draft of the condition that Jim did is that, depending upon the users of the building and how things get divided up, there may be more glass. And so I know everybody's happy with more glass, but I just wanted to make sure that we could do that. And we may have to shift it, but we committed to at least under all circumstances having the Maple Mechanic Street corner of the building and the opposite end of the building as you came down Maple Street to have that look that the board liked, and we are including in addition to that glass in the middle of the building, at least in 1 location.
Thank you.
Yep, I just didn't know, Jim, if the condition was describing something that we should see a picture of, or
There's a picture of it. There is, and we could
try to pull it up now.
No, I'm looking at it, so I see the picture. I thought there was some additional changes that we asked for in terms of depth, and if that's not spelled out, then should we spell it out?
This is the 2nd version, because this is showing the addition of the windows on the opposite end of the building from Maple and Mechanic. This is showing it by the drive, the exit drive by Maple. We did not have this originally. And then if you see, as you go down the face of the building, you see in the middle there's another bank of windows. At a minimum, there will be another bank of windows, not in that exact spot, in another spot, and there may be more depending upon the end users. And then when you get to the Mechanic Maple Street, which was the original rendering, that's where you can you show that one, John? Do you have that handy? Right. This is it. This is now on the opposite end of the building. So this design we originally had in this location, we through the comments of the board, we added the relief that you see, the windows in the middle, and what you just saw was the windows on the other end. All of those are spelled out in the condition, and this set of renderings is what's referred to.
Okay, but I guess that I'm just making a fine point, I guess, is there was a comment, and I think that we all sort of, oh, it's a good idea, and I think it's trying to capture it in the conditions, that the relief should be a different, more pronounced. And Jim, I could be wrong, but isn't that what we had a discussion on?
Yeah, if I can speak to that, I think, so in here, I think the intent was when you see the different panels in here, I think there's gonna be kind of separation between, call it this panel and that panel. It won't just be one flat surface that's painted per se, right, with different colors to break it up. So these will actually be offset a little bit between, this panel, and then the darker panels here, the light panel, the darker panels, they're gonna be set in and out in that regard. And then, they've got score lines in different areas to further break up those middle pieces. But you can kind of see if you look here, that generally reflects how they bump in and out all the way from the front corner back down. And essentially where the colors are broken up is what we're thinking.
What's the depth?
9 to 12 inches.
9 to 12 inches. They're gonna be done on site?
Yep.
So you can adjust them too, correct? As you build?
Yeah, so they use offset panels.
Yeah.
They set them about 9 or 12 inches off, right? And it's kind of based on the ultimate architectural renderings that become the project, where those panels will sit on that Maple Street facing wall.
Right, so and I'm sorry to keep belaboring this, but do we need to spell out the depth, Jim?
We're happy that you do, if you want to do that.
I don't want to do it. I'm asking if we should,
Okay.
because
Just to be
we
clear
talked
about it.
about it.
Yeah.
These renderings are now kind of stale, so I don't want there to be any confusion later on when we look at it and say, oh, that's not right. You know what I'm saying, Jim? So maybe I'm making too much of a big deal out of it.
I completely understand what you're saying, Brian. And yes, I think we can refine that condition number 4 to add maybe even some specific measures since we have some depth architectural scale available. So I can work with the developer to get a realistic measurement.
Not less than 10, not greater than 15 or something.
Yeah, what we want to be careful of is too specific a design, but if we have parameters that we're trying to gauge, we're aiming for, and Jim, you and I can work on that, no problem.
I'd say 12 would probably be a good number.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me just, for clarification, I think there's merit to, making sure there's a meeting of the minds on this, and so people aren't either disappointed later or you're not getting what you expected. I mean, the anticipated construction technique is going to be, tilt up, concrete wall tilt up construction. The design builder has told us the technique on how you make those reliefs. I think Mr. Finnegan just said they're offset 9 to 12 inches. If that kind of specificity ends up in the condition, that's okay with us. Because we reviewed that exact issue with the expected builder and made sure that that was a technique that he could use, and he affirmed to us that he could. And so I think it does make sense that we memorialize that technique in the decisions so that there's just nobody's disappointed at the end.
Exactly.
Thank you.
And that was exactly my point. Just two quick things. With regard to the wall, I noticed that whatever we incorporate, there's a historical marker that's also near the wall now, where the wall would be, at some four corners or something that was historically there. So I think that marker, if it was up to me, it would be somehow, and I don't know how, we encapsulate that information that's on the marker saying this is the four corners. It's historical for some reason. I think it's important that we, that part of the discussion with regard to the wall. And then the last question I had was with regard to, we talked briefly about that. You're on Maple, you take a left, the road's really close to the other property, and I apologize for asking you to look at the screening because of the other property. Have an opportunity to look into whether you can do any kind of screening there.
Yeah, I think to provide any additional screening, there's not enough room there between where the driveway is and the wall. But what we did confirm is the trees on their side of the property, and they're set further in than we are. So essentially, as you're coming down, our building is essentially closer to Maple Street. They're set in further and lower. So there's somewhat of a natural screen built in.
Is there any way you can stick in a couple trees somewhere? Or is there not?
I think if we could, we would. We've added a whole bunch of trees, so it's not an issue with doing that. I just think it's so tight on that side of the driveway. There's just not room to do. You've got a wall, and you've got the tiebacks for the wall. Just the constructability of trying to get something in there. I don't think it's really possible. We've really tried to up the opposite side of the driveway we've got the berm and the landscaping and all that. So coming down from Maple on that side, there's, the trees and spades kind of going down that side.
Yeah, if you can put screening or trees so that and I understand it's not your property and it's a discretionary ask on my part. So if you can do anything you can to keep your side of the property pretty, and I understand that there is screening on their property, it's their problem, it's not yours, but if you can, I appreciate that.
Absolutely, no issue with that.
When we can, I'll call you in a minute, sir.
I just want to explain the historical marker,
Sure.
okay? The reason that historical marker there is the Bellingham Four Corners is because that's where the trolley car intersection was. Bellingham had streetcars, and that was the Four Corners was the station where they would switch. You'll notice if you're down South Maple Street, like towards the recycling center, go bump, 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 bump.
Yep.
That's because they took up the tracks, but left the ties there and paved right over. In front of my house on Old Blackstone Street, where the dead end, the rails are still in the streets, sticking up. You can see the steel rails still there.
Okay.
And that marker could have a plaque or something put into the wall.
Yeah, I just want to, if it's possible to incorporate that
It's
historical.
an interesting thing. To think it was, we went to Silver Lake, where they're now building houses on the trolley car line. We used to walk that when I was a kid.
Oh, well. Very good, I'm over.
My turn.
Yes, sir.
I don't have much questions. I think just for the screening on the side, I'm going to disagree with you. Please do not put trees near the retaining wall with the geogrid, I imagine. Sorry, Brian. Yeah, engineer Trump's attorney.
Well, it just goes to prove, it goes to prove we don't discuss this ahead of time.
The that's coming up like 10 feet, right, on that side?
Yeah, the wall, yep, it drops down pretty significantly on their property and up on ours in that back corner.
Gotcha. And I think that those are mostly pine trees on that side, so there's no underbrush. So if you're standing 10 feet below, you're going to see the property. When it's 10 feet up, you're going to have brush from the pine trees because it starts higher. I'm not a landscape architect. I am just assuming this. The other thing too, you're going to be proposing some type of fence on top of the retaining wall, correct?
Oh, yeah, the plan showed that.
Yeah.
We need that for fall protection.
Gotcha. Because if worse comes to worse, maybe that can become opaque in areas. Maybe, but I don't really see screening being an issue. So, just a suggestion.
Don't listen to him.
This is not helping.
I'm partial to the engineers.
Thanks, John. I'm over. I'm done.
Yeah, I'll wait.
Last time we were here, we were talking about one open item about the bike trail that goes right in front of your building, knowing that that's a state road. Anything we can do there about getting it into the plans? I didn't see it in the plans.
So I talked to the traffic engineer about that, and essentially it's really going to be DOT, but we have to file a Mass DOT. We've got to file a permit with them for our driveways.
Yeah.
That's something they'll look at then, if that's something that they want on their road to put
Can
the bike path.
we, this is the time to look at it because, you're developing it. Is there a way that we can put that in a condition that that you guys go forward with DOT to request that the bike path goes past your property on that end? Would you guys be opposed to that? I mean, if you're going to be filing to DOT, this is the time when that bike path should be extended and it's through your property, and maybe it's not gonna go too much past your property, but that's the next project, you know. Is that a condition that you guys could live with? Or that would cause you guys a problem? Or, I mean, this is the time to work on the bike path, right?
Yeah, well, if I could just address, if the condition is phrased as that in the applicant seeking its access permits from DOT, it will indicate to DOT that the planning board desires to see that bike path extended. We're happy to do that, but
that would be outstanding.
That would be great.
But all the condition would be doing is that we would let DOT know that the planning board would like to see that extended, and either DOT is going to say, yes, we agree with it from a traffic and pedestrian safety point of view, or they may disagree that, no, that's not the place to extend it, the extra 200 feet. That's as long as it's the final decision is DOT's, because that's a master we gotta live with because it's a state road.
No, I appreciate exactly what you said and the way you said it and the language you used. I'd be all for that. If you're agreeing to that right now, I'm all for that.
You don't ask, you don't get.
And so let me just understand, John, it seems to me, and I got to ask John a question, that ask is an appropriate thing that we could raise with DOT. DOT may not approve it. Is there an issue in terms of if we needed to do that and push back our curb 5 feet, that would be a problem in your design? It would mean the building is not a setback as far, but is there room to do that, John?
If there's room to do that, there's construction implications from doing that. And anytime you're updating a DOT road, they might require full depth overlay. There might be poles that need to get moved to be doing that. So you could potentially start opening up larger impacted area than just moving a curb back 5 feet.
Yeah, so then all that I would ask the planning board is that we're happy to make the request, but that corner, does have, utilities. We had we all talked about the traffic control box that's there, and there's other utility poles and the like that's there. As long as, we make the request so that we don't have to get involved in rebuilding that corner, that would be cost prohibitive given the work that we're doing to extend the Maple Street lane, which does require moving several utility poles at a fairly significant amount of money for each pole. So as long as we could work with Jim on that condition so that we make the request and of DOT and the applicant not be required to expend, substantial sums rebuilding that corner, that works for us.
I don't think that's your intent, to have you spend substantial sums. I think the discussion's the important part. You agree?
I agree.
Okay, all right, so
let's see if we can do with Jim and get some language
Yeah,
in that you guys will be happy with.
we can get with Jim and add another condition that calls that out.
Nick,
Thank you.
Comments? Yeah, absolutely. So I'm new here. It's been talked about before, but just coming in, looking around town, the only welcome to Bellingham sign is coming off the off ramp on 495 in front of Home Depot. It's an outdated sign. You guys have an opportunity to raise the bar, set the standard. I'm glad that it's been looked at as long as it has been. And I think that the bar really has been raised. So I think it's an opportunity for other people other corners of town, when they do a welcome to Bellingham sign, I think that they're going to look at what you guys are putting up and learn from it. So.
Have you had a chance to see the renderings?
Yeah, they look really nice.
Okay, I guess I'll be last. I'll try to be quick. Item number 14, in regards to pre-blasting, how much notification will you give the abutters? I know it's 1 week, but will you work with them if there are any concerns?
We will, but we're not anticipating any blasting.
Neither am I.
Yeah.
Number 17, stone ice removal. Is there anything on site for a snow storage farm?
Snow storage farm.
Where you're gonna store your own snow?
Oh, yes, yeah, we've designated snow storage areas on the
Okay.
plan, yes.
And with regards to that, when you plan to put down ice, Begon, or Magic, are you gonna take in consideration the wetlands that are near you?
Yes, we're not, all of the snow storage areas are outside of, they're in the paved areas where
Yep.
will kind of drain into the system. The operation and maintenance plan was reviewed and vetted by the Conservation Commission.
Okay.
So they were comfortable with
All
that.
right.
They had one request at last night's hearing that we're going to add to the plans. They just wanted us to add signs along the trailer storage area by where that detention basin is.
Yes.
Just to say no snow dumping. So they've
Okay.
asked us to do that, which we agreed to do.
Okay. Number 18, you mentioned phosphorus and fertilizer shall not be used on the site. Again, I hope you're not gonna be using sand or other harmful products as ice melt. You know, caliper or something that's beneficial to the environment.
Yeah, I think whatever was in there, we wouldn't use phosphorus. I think sand would be appropriate.
But the sand involves the pickup and it gets gritty. So I deal, it doesn't work below 18 degrees. It just really at that point, minimally effective, just from my experience.
Yeah, no.
In risk management. So we can look at, some of the newer products that are less harmful to the environment. And lastly, picking up on something Phil had mentioned, going to DOT. Is there anything we can do, and I thought you alluded to it, about controlling the turning on those signals? Are we gonna be able to have an opportunity to change the length of time frame it takes for the lights?
Yeah, and I think that's something that Sean had discussed. I mean, that's something when we submit the application to DOT, they'll take a look at it and want to know and advise if they want us looking at the timing or not. And
Could that should be outlined somewhere?
The DOT requires timing.
No, that you will look at the intensity of time.
We could take that same DOT request that we had, and we could put in the concept, the traffic engineer did articulate it, that we could do a timing study if it was deemed appropriate by DOT. So we could say the same thing that the planning board asked the applicant to address with DOT, a timing study for the signalization at that intersection.
Because what I've heard from residents in town, coming up from Maple Street, from where the old railroad was, or what'd you call it, sir? The trolley cars?
Yeah.
Coming up from the recycling center. That light seems very long compared to the turning lane going southbound on Maple Street. So I've heard that from residents. So we could just explore that. Those are the only comments I have. Like to open up to the public. Anyone in the public have anything they want to add? I see Mike O'Haron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. I appreciate the chance to speak. Having been somebody who makes regular use of the referred to bike path, I'd correct it slightly. It's actually a bike lane, but a small difference, that's fine. I heartily endorse the extension and support the applicant's willingness to give up a few feet if necessary, ideally not even to pay for poles to be moved. Once I get past that intersection, which I bike through both directions in an afternoon, the bike lane disappears within a few feet after you cross the intersection headed towards Bellingham on Mechanic Street. And I'm envisioning just beyond that point, coming to a driveway where a truck may be turning, oblivious to the fact that somebody who's down and out of sight of their mirror perhaps is trying to move along the side and not get squeezed onto the sidewalk or crash into the curb. So a bike lane might give me a fighting chance to get by them without being killed or crushed, which I appreciate. So thank you for considering doing that. I'm not the only biker, but I'm rarely having company on that road, but it's something where cars already don't pay much attention. Second question, this was spoken to by a couple of the members of the board, but I didn't hear a clear answer. While the visual renderings shown on the corner of the building and right at the intersection and on the Maple Street side show what it'll look like. And there was some talk about screening on the west side, the side that faces towards Bellingham, which you would see as you approach the building from the Bellingham Center going towards Franklin. There were no visual renderings. Are there any available to see what that would look like? With between the drop off of the driveway, the tops of trailers, then the building, and is it a flat slab that's super unattractive as people leave Bellingham? Or is it something that has some sort of visual, not windows necessarily, but some sort of visual break? Because that side of the building, even though there are some neighboring trees, you can see a 30-foot expansive building pretty easily. I didn't see any renderings. Were there none done of it?
I don't believe we have renderings from those angles. One of the things we can confirm, and Wayne, we have to check with Arco, is the way he's doing the paneling on the Maple Street side. You know, we're not, that same type of relief doesn't happen on the loading dock side, but the question is there, does that continue on the Mechanic Street side? So we could check with the design builder.
Well, the Mechanic Street side, yes, but also the side facing towards Bellingham. The loading.
And that's going to be the loading dock side. You're not going to have they're not going to be able to design that side the same way as designing the opposite side, because
I'm not suggesting that, sir. I really recognize that'd be a waste of money to do that, but the idea of seeing as attractive as you're reasonably going to be able to make it, I guess, on one side of the building, contrasted with people leaving Bellingham seeing something that is nothing but an obvious slab of a warehouse side of building. Warehouses are warehouses. I'm not trying to make it look like a pretty mansion or something, but some sort of, even visually painting it some complementary colors, or architects can be very creative if they're given a little bit of direction, a little bit of money. And I think the town would be well served in having something that looks not decent on 1.5 sides, but on 3 of the sides that are visible to the public. I wouldn't really care about the north facing side because nobody's going to see that. Just a thought and observation.
It's a fair comment. You could be assured that it's not in the interest of Howland Development or the owner of the building to make the building look nice on 2 sides and have the other 2 sides not look attractive.
Well, at least the third side, which people would see, I think it would be noticed. Okay, thank you for that. I heard this stated today, but I just want to confirm. No signage will be allowed on the exterior of the building? Or how was that phrased exactly? I heard it earlier.
You can touch on that if you like, Mr. Chairman. So it's referring to the wall signage, and it's on both Maple and Mechanic Street side. So there was this discussion, I think at the last meeting, Mike, about try and preserve that as kind of an office type look, I guess, is what was described, at least at that time. And so, not deterring from that quality look with, glowing wall sign or something like that. So it was referred to try and prohibit that. And I believe the applicant has agreed to no wall signage on both frontages, while still allowing for, I would imagine, likely some sort of signage on the dock side for, practical reasons.
Right, I don't have any problem with that. My question is this: picturing all the other warehouses in town that I've been by, and I haven't been by everyone, but most of them, including further up Maple Street, even a couple of new ones, they either have a very prominent sign on a building or the building if they're wanting to and allowed to, but for sure they have one right by the street by their entrances. And while we don't want that look on the front of the building, welcome to Bellingham, with a huge Pepsi sign or something behind it, I would also ask that they may be not allowed to put one right next to the welcome to Bellingham sign as you see, for example, at the entrance to the Campanelli properties further up Maple, those are not unattractive signs, but putting it right next to Welcome to Bellingham, and then basically we're saying, we're a warehouse town, and here's our #1 warehouse as you enter from this side. So I have no problem with putting it on the back side of the building, and I'm sure that anybody occupying the building would want to advertise themselves in some way, unless there's a reason not to, which could be a problem. But is there any thought on that from the board? I don't know.
Mike, we've taken that into consideration. And that's why we didn't want to have any signs in the front. We do anticipate a sign somewhere on the side, maybe further down Mechanic Street.
Sure.
But, we do not want something near the front of the building that looks like an office, nor by the sign.
Right,
I think
okay, yeah.
that's an assumption we've all worked on, for several meetings now.
Mhm.
It's to reduce the harshness of any signs that will be located there. So that's why we did not want it on the front and sides of the building.
Right, I heard it on the building. I was thinking more of and not planting one into the ground right next to the Welcome to Bellingham sign, so that the two are not visually to visitors to the town, interchangeable. Oh, Bellingham and whatever company happens to be there at the time.
Yeah.
I don't believe that will happen. I've heard nods, I've seen nods, excuse me, can't hear a nod, from the applicant. They don't plan to do that.
Well, it would be up to the applicant to make sure that, correct me if I'm wrong, would be up to the applicant to make sure that that's in some sort of condition so that the tenant, for lack of a better word, doesn't just go ahead and do it or ask to do it and expect to have that complied with, that there's a defined area and sure, go ahead. That's fine.
To be located.
Okay, let me make a suggestion on this one. There is going to have to be some signage because you can't operate a building without appropriate signage, and I don't think anybody would want that. So I think maybe the best thing to do is to put a dotted line around the Welcome to Bellingham sign that is a no additional signage zone, or however we want to describe it, so you could have that sign stand alone and act the purpose for which we've always intended it. And this developer is going to spend a lot of money on that sign. You don't build a sign of that size with a stone facade and then destroy the look. So we're not hostile to identifying an area and working with John. Maybe we could put a dotted line that sort of, goes around that signage so that no signs can be within that dotted line, but there's going to have to be signage for the building to operate.
Oh, I agree.
I don't disagree with you. I think we like to have it removed as much as we can for the intersection for two purposes. Number one, if you have it closer to the intersection, it's to give the impression to people they can turn right onto Maple Street, and we don't want to have that happen. The further back we set it, it will alleviate
Well, that's why.
traffic control.
Yeah. So let us propose a dotted line around the sign where no other signage is allowed. Give John, the engineer, the civil engineer, an opportunity to do that, and we can get it into Jim.
I think that's fine.
Thanks. I had one other question, Mr. Chair. That's
sure.
related to if I missed this in a previous hearing, I apologize, but I understand the state controls the intersection and all the length of Mechanic Street. Does their control of the street on Maple extend by state rights or something up and down Maple at the intersection, any distance at all?
No.
Okay. And then the other question is, does the state controls the light and what the light does, the length of time you already talked about tonight for the light signaling and so forth. Has the state indicated whether there would be a no turn on red or a right turn on the signal only at that going south on Maple as you're right next to the warehouse with it on your right side and you're either turning towards Bellingham or sitting there waiting at the light to go left or straight through?
We have not gotten that detail from the DOT, from Mass Highway.
Okay, and so it will be up to them to decide that, correct? They will say, and you guys just have to abide with it, correct?
Yeah.
All right, my concern is this, that if if there is I'm gonna make sure I phrase this correctly so I'm not saying it backwards. If there is not a no turn on red sign, and they can turn right on red if this light, assuming there's a right turn, red light, green light arrow, and the traffic is coming across the intersection on Mechanic Street too, and you're supposed to yield to it, I would suggest that that would be a invitation to now a much longer line of people who are impatient because we've extended the right turn lane, dedicated right turn lane, to crank it right and try to cut into the traffic flow, which is going to cause accidents, especially as I mentioned at one of previous meetings. There happens to be a truck that's just gone through the intersection onto Mechanic, ready to turn right into the right turn into the building only entrance. And you don't have a lot of clearance. I understand how many feet it is. I've seen it on the plans and so forth, but that's not a lot of distance. So if the state is under control of that and they don't say no right turn on red or some sort of restriction, then I think it's just inviting the public who's impatient enough as it is to now have a longer line of people who want to honk their horns behind people like, come on, I'm fifth in line here. Why don't you cut it? I could have made that right turn, and they won't be stopped legally by a light, which might stop them from doing it. I go through an intersection every day at one of the busiest intersections in town, right by the middle school on Blackstone and Route 126. It has a light there. The light for people coming north on Route 126 have a no turn on red, very large sign, which is prominently placed at the intersection facing south. And many people, some of them with Rhode Island plates, but not exclusively, but many of them coming from that direction are from Rhode Island, in the morning in particular, don't even slow down. They'll just whip it right around that corner in front of a school, going right on red without even a stop. This is, I think, going to end up potentially being a similar situation. No school there, but I don't know. Since the state is going to control that, whether the signage goes in, I guess, as well as the lights, or is there, it's possible that town could put a no turn on red sign up right there on the corner of Maple Street. That's why I asked about the extension of the state up Maple at all.
I hear everything you're saying, but I have to say my reaction is there are traffic professionals that study this stuff, look at accident data, think this stuff through, and I hear your anecdotal description of what goes on and what could go on and how people can ignore the sign and honk and all of those things, and all that's true. Human behavior is human behavior, but the traffic professionals, I think, understand when to place no turn, when it's in the interest of safety and the public to put no red turn signs, when not to, and I think we should defer to the traffic professionals.
You mean the state?
Well, yes.
Okay, so.
Mike, I don't think the town has the ability to direct signage that would direct people onto a state highway. Have a no turn or left turn. I don't know if we're allowed to do that.
Is the town liable at all? And this is not a question that anybody can answer necessarily tonight. That's not an attorney even, and maybe they would want to think it over. But hypothetically, the town has encouraged, endorsed, and allowed an applicant to extend and increase the amount of traffic turning right onto Mechanic Street by this extension lane, right turn dedicated lane. Turn onto Mechanic Street from Maple. If there is not the appropriate action taken by the state, or even if it is taken and people ignore it, how liable is the town for encouraging and allowing the increase in traffic, not just the current situation where people can be stuck behind somebody who wants to go straight through the intersection and they want to turn right, but hey, sorry, you're more than 2 car lengths back, too bad, as it is now.
It's your hypothetical, but perhaps you could find an accommodation that if the state says no to this sign, perhaps we can approach the town to the safety officer and ask his opinion.
I would just point out that all municipalities in Massachusetts are protected by the Torts Claim Protection Statute, which limits all liability to all municipalities to $100,000 when they're negligent, and you're not going to make a negligence claim based on what Mike just described.
No, not at all.
Yeah, so there's no time liability.
I'm just throwing that out there because I hate to say this, but the situation, as much as the traffic study person for the applicant has said, is not going to be dramatically made worse. I wholeheartedly disagree, and I think, unfortunately, I would love to be proven wrong in this case, but I think this traffic situation at this particular intersection, not the warehouse project itself, but the location of the warehouse on this corner, with the traffic the way it is now and all the development that's actually happening on Mechanic and Maple Streets right now, is just going to cause the town some real nightmares down the road. And I'm just hoping I'm not in the middle of it. But thank you for listening. I appreciate the time.
Thank you. Anyone else? Jimmy, anyone have their hand raised?
I don't see anybody. Anybody online want to comment? I don't see.
Now is entertain a motion.
Oh, I think Mr. Martinez.
Yeah, yes, I've been trying, but I'm having a difficult time finding the hand. So sorry, folks. And I know it's late. I just wanted to pick up on one thing that Mr. O'Haron said earlier, and that is when you're driving west on Mechanic Street toward Franklin, and you're looking to the left and you're seeing the back of the facility, and I understand you can only do so much to dress up a loading dock, and I haven't seen any renderings because I don't think they've been done, but are there going to be plantings? Are there going to be any trees where in the back side or the west side of that building that may over time buffer the looks of the back of that building? You know, you can, as you know, you're doing the front of the building with some beautiful plantings. Is there a way to add some additional trees that'll grow over time to kind of block the back of that building so you're not seeing, and forgive me, I don't know how many loading docks there are, but let's just say the several loading docks and several tractor trailers parked in the back. That's all I'm suggesting. In thinking about the back side of that building, how you could dress it up a bit by using trees.
Thank you,
So,
Don.
what's that?
Just make a comment. Brian, didn't you raise this issue earlier about coming from downtown?
Sorry.
And what was the result of your discussion?
I think they put some additional screen, but I don't think we talked about the facade itself on the back.
Okay, could you bring up page 107?
Yeah. So I could speak to that a little bit. So this came up before, and the thought was,
I thought this would be.
Yeah, no, we definitely had discussed it, and there were a couple of items. So I can try to share a screen again. Bear with me.
Yeah, I think the landscaping plan is on
Yeah.
C701.
Yeah. So there's a couple things that play. I'm zoomed in here, but there's two things. Number one is you're coming in this direction from Franklin. You've got the building.
No, I think they're coming from.
No, I'm not
coming from
talking
Bellingham.
about
I spoke. I got you. I spoke.
Thank you.
Coming from Bellingham towards Franklin. Excuse me. So the Lindenmeyer building, that's pretty much right on the road. It's like when you look at it, that's at 20 feet from the road. We're 70 feet back, so we're much further back. So as you're approaching, you're looking at that building and those trees in front of the building. There's a lot of trees in front of that building as you drive down there. So then it was discussed. Well, what happens when you pass that area? What do you potentially see? It's a very, very short window, and we had discussed that the building itself is set down about 6 feet below grade. So this building is 6 feet lower than the grades here, the finished floor of the building, and the loading docks are 4 feet below that. So essentially, where a trailer would be parked is 10 feet lower than the elevation of the road when you're right here.
Okay.
I believe it was Mr. Salisbury who had asked, well, what additional can you do there just for that that short time if you drive by there and you happen to turn your neck to the left, what can you do? So it was discussed that we added a solid fence like right here along this angle here, to further block that view as you were looking in that direction. So that was added at a request of the board and presented previously. So that goes all the way essentially up to the tree here, all the way back to that corner.
So in essence, we have screened that
Correct.
as best we can. And we put things in place with the design of the building. So the loading docks are lowered.
But Mr. O'Connell, I don't agree, and I apologize. I know this is late in all of this, but my objection is a fence isn't always that nice looking. And I see that I can see the attention to detail that the owner here in there described, and I see what they've done to the front, but I would much rather see some trees that will grow to 15, they don't have to be 15 footers to begin with, but they could be an 8-foot spruce, properly spaced, and that'll grow into one another over time, over a fence that may need repair, winds. And I say that because there was fencing done where the Victory facility is to help with a neighbor from a noise perspective. And I don't know if you've ever seen this, but with the winds that we've had over the past few years, et cetera, and the change in the directions of winds, that fence is always broken. There's holes in it, there's a problem. And I just feel as though a more natural appearance would be better than a vinyl 8 or 10 or 12 foot fence. And I just think that the fence is going to detract from the beauty, what they're doing in the front of the building. That's all. That's my suggestion. I live across from Victory. I know people don't like that berm, but I can tell you they don't live here. That berm with the trees buffers a lot of noise. And it also, when I look out my second story window of my house and I look over to Victory, I see trees. I don't see a building. And I don't want to see a fence.
Okay.
So that's my point of view. The other thing I just want to emphasize, and I know you raised it, Mr. O'Connell, and I appreciate it, is the Maple Street going south and taking a left. I know we've talked about the light. Anything that we can do on the Bellingham side with DOT to have them study, because I do take a left out of there on a regular basis, and only one tractor trailer can get through taking a left onto Mechanic Street toward Franklin safely. If there are 2 tractor trailers, the one follows, and they always run the red light. That second trailer, or even vehicles, they can't see the light turn because they're right up against the back of the tractor trailer and they can't see the light. So I see it every single day. Cars running that, not intentionally or maybe intentionally, the red light. I'd like to see that light be somewhat longer, taking the left onto Maple Street, onto Mechanic Street. So I've said enough. I like the building. So I don't.
I appreciate what Mr. Martinez has articulated. Here's my concern. It may take a while for everything to grow up. Is it feasible? Is it an outlandish request to do both?
What height is that fence, John?
It's a 6
Well,
foot.
let me ask a question if I can to John and Wayne. If we put a row of arborvitaes, that are spaced properly, start off with 6 footers, within 3 years they'll be 8 to 10 feet, and within another 3 years after that they'll be 12 to 14 feet. Is that John, is that physically possible to do arborvitaes instead of that fence?
Yeah, and I think that's what I was just going to suggest to the board. If they preferred that, we thought if the fence made some sense, but certainly if the board would prefer to see a natural buffer, I agree with you fully. That would be the best buffer to provide. You have the green giant, essentially is what they're called. They grow 3 feet a year. It's year-round screening. So you put that in a staggered formation heading down where the fence was. And, it essentially started the height of the fence, and then through years.
Yeah, they'll grow into one another.
I understand that, Don. There may be a 3, 4, 5 year period
No, I understand that. I'm fine with
trying
it.
to alleviate that.
3 or 4 years goes very quickly.
Yeah, no, so,
Believe me, I'm not, that's why I suggested it. Because I'd rather see that, even though they may be short in the beginning, but 3 to 4 years goes by very fast. And they're gonna look, and they know exactly the tree you're discussing, and that would be fine. My preference would be a spruce, you know, a Colorado blue spruce. I know they're more expensive than arborvitae's, but you know, that's just me. I'm partial to blue spruce.
As we go through this process and you can start construction.
So thank you.
Thank you. How long it will take to build this? From the time the shovel goes in the ground?
To the landscaping being done and the shell being complete, probably about 9 months, depending on winter conditions.
Okay,
And then 3 months to fit it up for.
okay, so we're talking about a year.
For about a year.
Is it unrealistic to ask you, when you start doing your site prep, to set these trees up as early as you can?
Not at all. I mean, we just want to protect the trees from an.
I understand, but I would like to use, get a jump on the time frame as best we can.
Yep. We
And
can
still
optimize
protect
that.
the trees.
Yep. No
Can
problem.
I ask one question on that point? So I don't want to believe it, and I don't want to spend your money. I kind of like the idea of a wall and trees, but you can discuss that.
Mhm.
But on the other side, where there's the landscaping on the other side, see where I'm talking about?
Right.
Yeah, right there.
Yep.
Is there any way to not necessarily extend the landscaping, but to plant trees further deeper into the lot? So some of the truck bays, because it's not necessarily, now I'm thinking about it, it's not gonna be a second for people to drive by, because there is that left-hand turn lane. And the visual will be longer than just a second driving by. And also the people at the gas station across the street, you're gonna have a line, a direct sight into
So
the.
Brian, see where his cursor is now? Is that what you're talking about? Can you see where his cursor is?
No, I was actually, I mean, if that's a good place for you, I'll defer to your expertise, but I was thinking about if you can add trees there, great, but if you can add screening to right there, not up in, like, if you were driving a truck into the bays.
Mhm.
You know what I mean,
Well,
right-
whatever
right
you
there.
think is appropriate.
Yeah, if there's any way to do what you can to screen trees.
Yeah, so essentially what I'm hearing is we want to add some on this side over here, replacing the fence essentially with a green fence over here, and then to add some more trees coming down along this side.
Yeah,
as well.
and if you have if you have an idea about across the top there where you were initially talking about too, that would be fantastic.
Yes, sir.
The trees that you're talking about, how far out would you bring that one? I mean, would you bring them right out to where the lilacs are now? Because I think if you do that, you're gonna be blocking visibility from the cars coming out of the warehouse next door. When they wanna come out and take a left, they have to be able to see.
Yes.
And if the trees are right to the sidewalk, you're not gonna be able to.
I think you need to set them back a little further.
The sight line.
They are.
Or have them taken.
There's setback.
There's setback.
Because like right now, when you pull out a rapid refill, if you want to go left, you have trouble seeing because they got that big police sign near the box. Is it trying to make a left turn? I have to look under the sign.
Same here.
So whatever you can do, that would be great.
When you look at the docking there with the trucks back in, you're only gonna see about 2 feet at the top of the truck, correct? They're gonna be down 12 feet to begin with.
Agreed, they're gonna be set down.
It looks like they back in on an angle. So
Yeah.
you're only going to see the first one.
Yep. Because it'll be buried by the other one, so to speak. Anyone else in the public? Anyone else in the board?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
just a quick question. I want to make sure the length of that back of the building, looking at the plans, I was just looking at them off a different screen. It's about 640 feet across the back length of that building. Is that right, Mr. Feldman?
yes.
Okay, and correct me if I'm wrong, I know. Whoa, beg pardon?
That's
Mike.
Who's Mike? Is that Mike again?
Yeah, so I was just checking, the length of the building is about 640 feet across the back length. And on that back corner, I mean, the corner closest to Mechanic Street that we were just talking about with the trees and so forth, I understand it dips down about 6 feet and there's an additional 4 feet for the loading dock or vice versa. So about 10 feet below grade for where the trucks sit. The building elevation, if I remember from an earlier meeting, was 40 feet. Is that an average, or is that just in the front of the building and the back of the building would be different because of this drop down?
John, you have to speak to the height of the building. I mean, the height of the building is static. It's, you know, from the, it's not going to look from Mechanic Street, the building is not going to look as tall because the building is set down into the ground.
Right, but from the ground level where it is now, as you approach from the backside of the building coming away from Bellingham, if I'm understanding it right, you see about 30 feet of exposed building, if there were no trees or anything blocking it.
Yeah, there's a very short distance when you drive by the driveway that you will be able to see the back of the building, and you're not going to be able to see all the way down the back of the building because
my point is, if you sat in traffic, you can edge along there and sit through 1 or 2 light changes.
Yes.
I'm not saying that you won't see it for only a second if you're driving by. I'm not disagreeing. I'm just trying to make sure that the board understands that we're talking about an exposure. I'm not even talking about the trucks that you would see. I'm just talking about the exposure of the back of the building is, I'm trying to make sure I'm right, 640 feet long by about 30 feet of height because it drops down about 10 feet. Is that correct?
Yes, you're correct.
Okay. All right, I just want to make sure that's a big expanse of wide blank slate, so to speak, which some signage might help break it up with advertising or whatever, or maybe some painting or so on. But even if you're only seeing a brief expanse of it, when you stand on the ground now and look around, there aren't too many other things that are 30 feet above grade right now there. There may be a few trees which probably will be taken down in order to clear the lot. But even with the adjacent properties, some of the pines and so forth you're referring to, or buffer trees, are not huge trees. They block some visual, yes, if you're in a small car and so forth. But I think that that's going to be a much bigger visual impact than maybe realized by some people or spoken to here. I just want to make sure I'm correct in my numbers there. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to take a motion to close the public hearing.
So why don't we not close, the suggestion is, why don't we not close, because there's some things that the applicant is going to revise the plan and do other things and show us things next meeting. So maybe we don't have to close the meeting, but we can still move forward with the decision process if that's your way.
How do you plan to accomplish that?
You can do both. We can ask Jim to revise the conditions, and if the board's inclined to draft a favorable decision, and then we can look at whatever they're going to submit to us on the next meeting.
We'd like to make a motion.
So I'll
leave the public hearing open.
Yeah. I don't know. It's like, so what are we doing?
I think what you articulated was you would like Jim to update the draft conditions. At the same time, to draft a favorable decision. Okay. I need a second. Okay. Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes.
We need to continue.
I'm sorry?
We need to set a continuing.
We'll
date,
need
and
a
that's what
motion to
we
continue
May
this to the
26th.
April 26th meeting. And do we need to change the dates? No.
May 26th will
Yeah.
be the continuation.
We're gonna again a busy agenda on the
Mhm.
26th.
There's enough time to do what you got to do.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward.
And if you can get that to us, so it's basically a week.
Yeah, by next Friday.
So we have a chance to look at it.
Not a problem.
So did I'm not sure I heard, it's been continued to May 26th, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and to give the board a sense, I hope we're in a position to close the public hearing and vote the same night. We can't start the DOT process until we complete the local process. So, and that's going to take us a little bit of time with DOT. So we'd like to get started on that as soon as we're able to. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So I don't know if we've made the motion.
Seconded to continue to 20. All in favor, continue this public hearing motion to the 26th of May. Please signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Have we all had a chance? It's been a long night. Have we all had a chance to review the minutes? Do you want to?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Are you leaving?
Oh, all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
I'd like a motion on the floor to approve the amended minutes from a previous meeting. Do I have a second? All in favor of amending the previous minutes from the meeting? Please signify by saying aye. Aye. I think we have a picture of trolley cars over
Picture
there.
of the trolley tower on Hartford Avenue.
Anything else?
No, just the town
Ryan
meeting is on the
remembers
25th.
Yeah, I want to remind you, our meeting will be the first public meeting after the town meeting on Wednesday, 25th. I encourage everyone to attend that. Motion to
Jim has
adjourn?
anything else? Jim, anything else?
No, nothing else.
I think we're good.
Before we, Liz left, but I was gonna
Oh, go ahead.
thank Liz for her service to the board. She was a valued member and, 2 minutes too early, but on behalf of myself, I'm sure.
I think the entire board wants to express sincere appreciation to having Liz on the board. She's a valuable asset. I hope she continues in the public domain in Bellingham. And I learned a lot from her. And again, I want to thank her for everything she's done. And we're moving forward with a new makeup. And we look forward to working with you down the road.
So,
You know, motion. Good night, Bellingham.
oh, we already did the motion?
Yes.
All right. Good night, Bellingham.
Good night, Jim.